2. And here we go.
All right, let's
Nick,
do it.
How are you, brother?
Fantastic, man. It's nice to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me out here. I really appreciate it. It's a beautiful area.
It's fantastic. Like I told you, I can't even tell you how lucky I feel to be in this spot.
Yeah.
Even, not even just the town, but the location is peaceful.
It's chill.
Yes.
It's so chill. So you're a police officer, you're in law enforcement.
Retired, yeah.
Right. And we'll get into all of that. Before we do, how was it growing up?
Growing up was great, man. I'd kind of joke with people, and I was telling my mom this the other day, that I feel like I had about the most idyllic childhood you could ask for. That kind of small town America, little league and picnics and that kind of thing. I know there was times that money was tight, but as kids, we never kind of felt that. My folks did a great job keeping that away. We had the dog, we had a couple goats for a while, just outside of town. It was, I had a good life, man. I loved it growing up. I was very lucky.
That's good. Did you know you want to get into law enforcement at that time?
Yeah, I knew from the time I was really little. I was like, well, I was either going to be an actor or a cop.
Okay.
And one of those was much more attainable than the other. My mom's favorite story to embarrass me is that I was about 6 years old and we were riding our bikes down to the bagel shop. And I saw some kid riding the other way, a little bit older kid, and he wasn't wearing his helmet. And apparently I stopped my bike and planted my little feet and said, hey, you should really be wearing a helmet. And that was when my mom knew I was going to be a snitch.
That was just snitch. Either a cop or you're going to work for the cops.
That's right, exactly.
Informant.
And, and then as I kind of got older, when I got into high school, I started as an explorer and really got a taste for what the job was actually like instead of just the TV thing.
Yeah.
And I met some really good guys that mentored me and that we stayed friends long after I became a cop.
Mm.
It always just felt like the right thing to do.
Yeah.
I tell people that I reached my childhood dream at 20 years old when I got sworn in, and I still count it as one of the best days of my life.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're an explorer. That's interesting. I feel like a lot of people don't really know about the Explorer program.
Yeah, I still talk to people and they don't understand it. And I tell them, I go, think about it like a job shadow program.
Yeah.
It's a way for kids to get around cops, be around police equipment and police stations, and ride along on calls and get an inside perspective on this is what it's really like. You can ask the questions. You can, and as you get a little bit more advanced, certain officers will let you work the radio for calls, or they'll let you take fingerprints, or things like that on kind of low priority, low risk situations, so that you can start really developing some of those skills that you're not going to get anywhere else.
Yeah.
And once I got into the academy, it ended up being really helpful for me.
Yeah, I bet.
Because I already knew not to be the guy that said, well, I know this, and I don't know anything.
Yeah.
But as we started doing some of the training, I go, okay, I've got some experience here. And so for all the ways that I was really deficient going to the academy, and some of our mutual friends can tell you a lot about that, I had a few little legs up thanks to that Explorer program and a little bit more realistic view of what I was getting into.
Yeah, and it kind of gives you, it starts to build that structure for you as far as a chain of command and discipline. And
absolutely. And
even if, in fact, just this morning I had a meeting with somebody and we were talking about an Explorer program for them, for their agency, and I said, even if the kids don't want to be cops, it still instills certain things into them for work ethic and things like that. So it's just beneficial all the way around.
Absolutely, and I know, out of my Explorer post, I think only 2 of us ended up going onto the job, and the rest of them though they gained the discipline, the work ethic, the understanding of a chain of command, all of that kind of stuff plays into other workplaces, plays into education, into family.
Yeah.
I recommend it for everybody, at least for a year or two, just to see what it's about.
Yeah.
And give you a better understanding of even just the job that so many people only know through TV.
Yeah.
Or their only traffic stop or whatever.
You just see the excitement and that's it. You don't see all the behind the scenes writing paper for you for hours and stuff.
Exactly.
And, I was an explorer too when I was younger, and you make some lifelong friends.
That's
you
fact.
Really do. And it's a great thing for kids, especially for kids, like where I grew up, which wasn't the greatest of areas. To be able to have somewhere to go, so you're not just out there running around the streets.
You've got that structured thing.
Yeah, exactly. So you went to the academy, and then where'd you get hired on at?
So I got hired. In fact, I got sponsored through the academy, which I still count myself incredibly lucky, and I feel like I pulled one over on them. I still don't feel like I deserve it. I got hired on with Sacramento County Sheriff, and it ended up being really lucky for me because I was a hard partying frat boy, and I was having a blast in college. I just wasn't learning anything. And I kind of had one night where I got home from a party, and I thought to myself, I go, God, I'm really lucky to have this kind of, my folks are helping me pay for school, and I don't have to take out loans, but I'm wasting it. I was throwing it away. And so I started looking. I said, well, I know I want to be a cop, and that's kind of why I'm not taking this stuff seriously. Is none of it is pertinent. It didn't feel pertinent at the time to being a cop. And so I filled out my application for Sac County Sheriff drunk after a party and somehow got hired. I still am baffled by it. And so I got into the academy at 20 years old. And I tell you what, that was a good way to grow up fast. Yeah. I had to learn a lot of things that I had not really experienced before.
Oh, wow.
And I'm really grateful for it. It helped me become a much better man.
Yeah. Did you finish school? Or you?
I didn't. No, I dropped out of college, and it's something that I've thought over and over again about going back. And there's a whole bunch of reasons I haven't yet. And maybe someday I will. But so far things are going okay without it, so I'm kind of good.
Yeah. It seems like it's easier to go to college and then get out of college and then get hired on rather than trying to go back once you get hired because it's because of the job and all the hours and everything else. So
right, and there's so much stress, and so now anytime I have a chance to mentor people or talk to them, I tell them just finish school first. Yeah, it's an extra couple years. The job's not going anywhere.
Yeah, there's still gonna be crime.
Right, and the extra the extra time, the maturity, and if for nothing else, the extra money you'll make with the education incentive, it's worth it. Yeah, just finish it. Take your time. Don't rush into the stress and the BS that goes with this job. Yeah. So you were hired with Sac SO, and then so how was that when you got out of the academy with the SO? Getting out of the academy was a really great feeling, and I kind of still look back at that first year on the job as one of the best years of my life. I went straight out of the academy and started working in the jail. I was on a weekend graveyard shift at the jail, kind of at our branch jail, which was kind of known, that shift in that location, as the place where you send guys that have screwed up. Okay. And so it was wonderful for me because when I got there, I found out that they weren't screw-ups. There were people who maybe had done silly things or gotten into trouble, but they were hardworking, dedicated people who had a lot of experience and wildly different personalities. We had we had 4 sergeants on the shift and 1 lieutenant. Our sergeants were fantastic. Our lieutenant was great. And so working that shift was, from a kind of a square kid from the suburbs, to go into a correctional environment, and all of a sudden I'm working with real criminals. Yeah. It was really exciting for me, and I was able to obviously learn a lot. I had great mentors there, great training officers, and we had a ton of fun. We took a lot of pride in kind of being a hardworking shift who did more shakedowns and more extra things than anybody else. But I feel like we also goofed off more than anybody else. Yeah. Which I liked that balance of I'm happy to work my butt off, but I want to have fun to match it. Yeah, exactly. I mean, why else would you want to just come there and just... Exactly. Yeah, you gotta have fun. So yeah, I was in the jail, I think, for 8 months or so before I rotated out to what they were calling Patrol First at the time. I don't know, I don't think they're doing it this way anymore, but the idea was before your probation is up, we're gonna take you out, do patrol training, make sure that you can cut it on the street, because we're not training jail deputies, we're training patrol deputies. Right. And that's we want you to eventually rotate out. And we were told, okay, you're gonna do, you'll do a year, maybe 2 years in the jail, and then you'll go out to patrol or wherever else. And I think by the time it was all said and done, the last guy out of my academy class rotated out to the streets 8 years after we graduated. Wow. I mean, it was just, and granted there were a lot of, the market crash and all that happened. Yeah. So a lot of things happened, but I looked at these guys and I said, listen, I ran a full career and retired out on an injury before you guys even made it back to the streets. I think once you get 8 years in the jail and then try to go back out to the streets, you've lost everything you had. All of the training before was kind of a waste because now things have changed and you've lost those perishable skills. And right. So is that the idea behind working in the jail, so you can get a little like a street experience to some extent? I think a little bit of it is and again, I don't know exactly how they're doing it now. It's been a while since I was there, but you either went to the courts or to the jail. Okay. And it was a great thing. For 2 years, it's a wonderful thing because you get, again, you're getting that kind of in a somewhat controlled environment. You're getting some experience. You're learning how to work with other deputies. Yeah. You're learning how to work with the so-called criminal element, and you're learning how to talk to people primarily. And that's one of the biggest skills I see as lacking in street cops that I interact with, is they're just not able to just banter.
Yeah.
And bantering makes the whole job easier. And so working in a jail, you have a chance to sit down and talk to these guys.
Yeah.
And a lot of them, once they're in jail, they're convicted of their crime, they're happy to talk about it. So one of my training officers told me early on, he said, every chance you have downtime here, go talk to these guys. Look at what they're in for and go ask them if they're willing to tell you about it. Oh, you're here for boosting cars. Okay, well, what do you look for? How do you do it?
Wow.
What, what kind of techniques? What, whatever.
Yeah. You can't get that in a book. I
No,
mean, this is
yeah.
great education right
Exactly. And you hear so often, okay, well, once you get on the streets, forget everything you learned in the academy. They'll give you the bare bones, but the real meat of the job and the real day-to-day operations they're not book learned.
Yeah.
It has to be learned with somebody who's done it. It has to be learned by doing. And the jail was a great place to get a little bit of that experience, to get comfortable talking with people. And in my case, and I'm sure lots of other guys, I also developed a lot of confidential informants there. So by the time I got to the street, I was able to impress my training officers within the first week by solving cases, because some guy that recognized me from the jail would come up and go, hey, what are you guys looking for?
Oh, wow.
Well, we're looking for a weapon. Oh, well, I don't want to tell you nothing, but maybe if you look in that dumpster, you might see something.
Yeah.
Great, thanks. See you next time you're inside.
Yeah.
And it all came down to, again, you learn how to give respect and get it back in a way that in civilized society you don't do.
Yeah. And what's funny is I hear that, I've heard that a couple times already so far, is the newer guys that are coming in, the generation or whatever, seems like they're having difficult times interacting with people.
Right.
Is it because all they do is interact through social media, or
Right.
what's the?
I bet it's a little bit of that, and I think, again, from a guy I've been a trainer, but I'm not involved in training planning or any coordination, but I think there's also a lot of training that's focused on liability, or we've got to get certain hours in this, we've got to get certain hours in this, and there's so much that needs to be trained in such a short amount of time just to get people to the field training stage, that you don't have time to get a lot of this stuff. And the academy environment is so structured and so rigid that you don't have time to learn how to banter. You don't have time to learn how to develop a CI, talk to people on their level, because you're so stuck in the yes sir, no sir, robotic kind of deal. And so I was joking with a cop buddy today about, I really feel like I should develop a class about improv and normal communication for rookie officers. Just teaching guys to go, hey, turn off the cop brain for a minute.
Yeah.
Talk to him like he's some dude on the street.
Yeah.
What's up, man? How you doing?
Yeah.
Talk to him about baseball. Talk to him about football. Talk to him about his family. All of those things are what build a rapport, and you can do it in 3 minutes if you're good at it. And you can develop enough rapport that this guy now is going to trust you, and he's going to work with you, and he's going to know that you're not just here to hook him up and take him away.
Yeah. And that's huge, is just like you said, just talking to somebody on a normal basis.
Yeah.
Instead of sir or ma'am or
Right.
you probation or parole and this kind of thing. But I know a guy who used to carry cigarettes with him. Didn't smoke.
Nope.
But he'd carry them with him.
Yep.
And offer them to people that
was me.
and just BS with somebody.
I carried 3 or 4 brands. I carried the Black and Milds. I had Swishers. I had everything that I thought. And I go, listen, whatever you do with this thing is not my business. I'm just going to give it to you, and you can either smoke it or save it. But, and these little tricks that I learned from really smart, really experienced veteran guys that made me better at my job, made me safer at my job. The cigarettes, which I used to call Snitch Bait. Like, hey man, you're having a rough day. You want to smoke? Or if I hooked somebody and they were being difficult, I'd go, hey, listen, if you're cool and you cooperate with me, you're going. So just be cool. I'll let you pick the music in the cruiser. I'll let you pick the temperature if you want the windows up or down. And if you're really cool, we'll stop at McDonald's and I will buy you dinner on the way in.
Wow.
And so I would take him into the Sally Port of the jail. I'd pull him out and I'd go, all right, listen, you know where you are. If I take these cuffs off you and you get squirrely, the goon squad's gonna come out. I don't want that. So I'm gonna let you eat. I'm gonna give you a smoke. We got 15 minutes to chill, and then I'll take you in. And it's amazing what kind of information and what kind of rapport you can build with somebody with something as simple as a cigarette and $4 worth of food.
Yeah. I've never heard that before. That's great.
I try to share it with everybody because it's such a valuable thing. And again, we had this real old timer who was working when I was on patrol, and I would come into work 2 hours early because I was told that's what a good trainee does. You don't put it for overtime, you just come in. So I would come in, I'd get some reports done, I'd check my gear, and then I'd just hang out and listen to whoever was around. And this guy had been on the job 40-something years. And so he was as salty gets. And you'd shake his hand and he'd feel like you'd feel like he was breaking it. And I remember I'd walk into the locker room, he'd already be there getting dressed. And he'd go, "Come here, kid, sit down." And so I'd sit on the bench and he'd go, "Let me tell you something." And it would be some different little pearl of wisdom, whether it be about arrest technique or an obscure law or a policy or little tricks like that.
Yeah.
And I would just pull out my little notebook and start scribbling.
And that's gold right there.
Oh yeah, and that was more valuable than anything I learned in the academy. Anything.
Yeah.
That was more valuable than any push-up I ever did, any test I ever passed, any of that. And I still use it in the work I do now. Whether it be in mental health counseling or private investigations or just talking to people on the street. Those techniques have made me much better at being in public.
Yeah.
And dealing with people.
Yeah. I talk to a lot of folks, and that's another thing that is brought up too, is you have this, at least for the larger agencies, with they had a point where they weren't hiring, and now they're hiring a lot. So you have this gap between the senior guys and then the junior guys of 2 or 3 years, a huge gap. And as these senior guys leave, they don't want to talk to these younger guys for whatever reason, and they leave, and you lose all that experience.
Right.
And then these newer guys now have to make all the same mistakes all over again.
Right. They're you're swimming upstream already.
Yeah.
And all of these guys, and again, I got so lucky to have guys that were willing to talk to me. I got sworn in at 20 years old. I couldn't even buy my own bullets, and these guys would take the time and tell me when I was being stupid. And they would haze me plenty, but they would immediately turn it around and make it a learning experience and make it valuable.
Yeah.
And we need more of that. And I think because of the stress of the job, especially in the last 5 to 10 years, and all of the extra things that have been going on, guys are so caught up in their own stuff and in their own survival and their own just day-to-day, they don't even think to go, okay, we got 4 new rookies on the shift. Who's mentoring them?
Yeah.
It can't just be the training officer.
Yeah.
Because as much as I learned from my training officers, it was the guys that would pull me aside, during chow and go, "Hey man, I saw you doing this thing earlier, and I'm not going to tell you how to do stuff, but can I give you a tip?" "Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Give me all the tips you got."
Yeah.
Or, "Hey dude, I read that report you wrote, and I really like this, but this section was just hot garbage." "Okay, well how would you do it different?" "Oh, well, boom, boom, boom. Here's my report." "Great. Now I've got another resource." And it's in the same way that I advocate cops learn how to talk to the public, they need to learn how to talk to each other without the badge on, so to speak.
That's a good point. And I feel like it's almost, maybe some guys are almost afraid to talk to these newer guys because they think, the younger generation or whatever is going to complain, or they're
or they're not going to listen,
offended or something like that. You don't want to be offensive, and so they're, the jokes and the banter are kind of slowing down, and they're afraid to approach them and say, "Hey, what the heck are you doing?"
And that's something that will hopefully balance out. I mean, this whole, with so many good things happening with the Me Too movement and some of the political correctness and the shifting of the workplace dynamics, we're losing a lot of good parts of it as well. And it'll just have to balance out as people figure it out.
Yeah.
But you can't be a cop with a thin skin. You can't do it. And I don't know the answer on how to train that in while respecting people's rights and their comfort and all that. But by its nature, law enforcement is a career that makes you uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You don't get into that job because you like chilling out and enjoying the air conditioning.
Right.
And so some of that, again, might come in academy training and be reinforced by FTO and then reinforced by advanced training afterwards of, we're going to have some conversations that make people uncomfortable here. We're not here to offend, we're not here to piss people off, but we are here to push a little bit of your comfort zone and make it okay to talk about difficult subjects, whatever they may be. And all of that can only serve to better us.
Yeah.
As long as we do it honestly and with the spirit of respect.
Especially given the fact that you're going to see some uncomfortable things, and the people that you deal with, they're not going to be worrying about offending you. They're going to say some very offensive things to you.
Exactly, and that's something I take a lot of umbrage with, some of the profanity policies that we get with departments, and I understand them. From a public-facing perspective of your standard taxpayer citizen, they don't want to see their cops talking like sailors.
Yeah.
They don't want to see them with tattoos and all this kind of stuff. But when you think about the type of people we deal with on a regular basis, we're not dealing with the blue-haired granny driving home from church every day. We're dealing with people who are outside of society. They're, whether it be the criminal element or just fringe people, they don't talk like normal people.
Right.
if we can't speak to them on their level and in their language, they're not going to listen to us.
Yeah.
If I can't use profanity at certain moments, you've put me on the back foot already, because some people only understand that kind of language.
Yeah.
And that's such a skill of understanding your audience and understanding when it's appropriate and when not. And as soon as you start taking that discretion away from officers, you're limiting everything they can do, and you're setting them up for failure.
Yeah.
And again, with liability, with the caution of offending people and all that, I think we've gone a little too far with some of the policies of mandating language and mandating this kind of thing, so that you don't have the freedom to improvise and to make it work, which is a real shame.
Yeah. Yeah. Does it seem like, I'm sure you've talked to a lot of cops from all different places. Does it seem like is it specific? It's not just specific to California agencies.
No, this is a nationwide issue. I mean, California certainly has its own flavor of it.
Yeah.
But cops everywhere are dealing with this. And, obviously, from a rural to an urban department, you're going to have a little bit different policies, a little bit different attitudes, a little bit different freedom levels, in different ways. But the issues that I'm noticing with law enforcement seem to be universal. And so when, and again, there's a lot of conversation in the public about police culture. And a lot of people don't have any idea what police culture actually is. And for all of those problems, which can be debated in plenty of other places with more educated people than me, there are conversations that aren't happening, that should. And I don't know if the public needs to be involved. I think it would be helpful. But cops need to start understanding, well, how are we representing ourselves? And how are we being a part of our community?
Right.
And again, that whole us versus them thing goes both ways. But I've been involved now for several years as a citizen making calls. When I was, I would go for sunrise walks in Sacramento every morning, and I would see auto burgs, both happened and in progress. I would call it in, and I'd get an officer that would come out, and they'd talk to me, and they would treat me like I was a piece of crap. And I would look at that, and I'd go, I used to be one of you.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not going to tell them that.
Right.
But if this is how you're treating a guy who's reporting a crime, how are you dealing with victims? How are you dealing with people that just walk up to you on the street and want to talk to you? And what does that do for our image? And I think guys forget that so many times when you are wearing a uniform and interacting with somebody, that may be the only interaction they ever have with a cop in real life. That's a heavy burden.
Yeah.
That's a big deal. And it's not emphasized enough, I think, for officers to keep that in mind.
Yeah.
And so that's one of those cultural things that I've really tried to, in whatever ways I can, kind of help people at least be aware of.
Yeah.
Just think about it. Decide what to do with that in mind.
Right.
Because it doesn't take a lot of extra thought. And if you're thinking about it ahead of time, it's a lot easier to have something ready and be able to respond.
Yeah, and the officers got to understand too that typically, usually, the citizens, they don't call when they're just having a great day. Hey, come hang out, come talk to me.
Right.
And they're calling because they're probably having one of the worst days in their lives. And so you need to be, show empathy and everything else and try to relate to them as best you can. I understand maybe you just came from a call where, a baby died or something, and you're emotional about that. I understand you're not robots. And
that's where a lot of the work that I focus on now is around the culture of that part in particular, of if we build police departments and communities, actual communities, not just the, forgive my language, but the bullshit law enforcement family crap we hear all the time, which I don't believe in at all, because in my experience it's totally fake. If we build a culture where it's okay to talk about, hey Sarge, I just left this really messed up call and I need to take 10 minutes and talk to somebody just to get it out of my head, and then I'll deal with the rest later, but I need to kind of clear it out. Okay, great, come on in, you can now talk to me. I get someone from peer support on the phone. You got somebody on shift you want to talk to. That's not a conversation that ever happens in my experience. A lot of guys are afraid to talk about those things and those effects because they don't want to lose their jobs. They don't want to get suspended. They don't want to get pulled off the street. They don't want to get judged by their peers. And for as much progress as we've made, which we've made a lot in the last 10 years, there's a long way to go to kind of break down some of that macho tough guy culture. And if we have an environment where we foster those discussions, where we make it a safe thing to do, to call up your buddy, call up your boss, call up whoever and say, okay, I'm a little messed up today. Cool, let's deal with it. How can we help? What's on your mind? And it makes it a lot easier for guys to make that transition from terrible call to just talking to a normal person to terrible call, whatever, you know.
Yeah.
Because, you know, like you're saying, there are so many guys that they go from an injured or deceased child or a vehicle wreck or whatever, and then they have to go talk to someone whose house was broken into and nothing was stolen. And you've got to treat them both with the same importance and the same attention.
Right.
And we're not built for that.
Yeah.
You're not built to go from one to the other in 10 minutes. So we have to work ahead of time to deal with it,
Yeah.
not to wait till guys break down.
And that's a great point, because when you think about it, you have critical incidents, you know, someone hold up in a house or whatever the critical incident may be.
Mm-hmm.
Afterward, usually what happens is they'll do a debrief and they'll talk about, okay, our tactics. What did we do wrong? What could we do differently next time? But there's never a debrief as far as
how do you
know,
feel?
Right.
Anybody dealing with it?
Yeah.
You know, okay, how are we all going to manage the stress of this? And again, it's, you know, all of the research I've done on PTSD and on, you know, traumatic incidents tells me that if you can go through a critical incident, whether it be an officer involved shooting or losing a partner or whatever it may be, if you do it alone or feeling like you're outside of the community, you are at much higher risk than if you have a group of people sharing that burden with you. Mm-hmm. And whether they were there and present and can totally understand it or not, if you go back to the station and you've got a group of people that go, hey man, bad night, let's talk about it real quick. And here's my number, you call me tonight, I'll call you in the morning. And then you've got a check-in process. And not just that day and the next day, but for a couple weeks afterwards at least. People checking in with you, people helping you out, and letting you know that it's okay to feel what you're feeling. It's okay to process it and get it out of you. That stuff is so vital. And I've talked to a lot of people who aren't involved in law enforcement about those specific things, and the answer I get from a lot of people is, well, they knew what they were signing up for. Mm. I go, that's bullshit. That's such a cop-out of an answer, because it's not just in law enforcement's interest to have healthy, mentally sound cops. It's not just in their families and their friends and their coworkers' interest. It is in the community's interest. The healthier our cops are, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally, the better job they're going to do, the more effective they're going to be, and the better service they're going to provide to the community.
Yeah.
And it's something that is so woefully underserved. It really bums me out. It's become kind of a crusade for me to just start shifting that a little bit and breaking that in for people. That's
something you don't hear. And I think just in general, and I could be wrong, but I feel like in general, just the overall culture is, we're superheroes. Mm-hmm. We're out there, we're strong, we never back down. We fight evil.
Right.
So when you realize something or you deal with something that's really troubling, then you don't want to really put it out there.
Then what? Yeah. And you feel like you're doing something wrong now. And and again, I kind of make the analogy with people because the superhero movies are so big now. I go, how many superheroes you see never have a bad day? Never have a bad day dealing with the stuff. Batman's done it, Superman's done it, Spider-Man, they've all done it. Mm-hmm. Why are we any different? If we're going to pretend to be superheroes, let's look at the whole picture.
Yeah.
You can't be the hero all the time. And so whether it's at home with your family, privately with a therapist, at the station with your buddies, you have to talk about it. You have to deal with it. You have to share the experience and let other people carry some of the burden for you.
Yeah.
It's the only way.
Something I hear from people too is that, they say, well, I see some pretty bad things on the job, mm-hmm. and I don't want to take that stuff home. Right. I don't want to tell my wife or my husband or anyone else, because one, I don't want them to realize how dangerous my job really is, and two, I don't want to expose them to what right. real life is like
that part of the world.
Cells. So I just keep it to myself.
Right.
Is that how's that?
So unhealthy and dangerous. And I get it. I understand it, especially when it's kids and a family member who is, whether it's a spouse or whoever, who's not exposed to those kind of things. But and I was that guy for a while too. Mm-hmm. I used to tell girlfriends or whatever, I go, I'm not going to talk to you about it. I don't want you to really know about that. I don't want you to see that side of me even. When I have to put on my tough guy face and go deal with it. But to me, it's just another form of lying. You have to find a way to express it, even if it's privately with your wife or your husband. But again, the best way to deal with it is with other people who understand. So if you can go through a critical incident, spend an hour after shift or half an hour sitting around with the guys and girls on your shift and talking through it. And just kind of working out how you feel about it. Then you can go home to your family, and with a little bit clearer head and a little bit less emotion, you can say, listen, I had a really bad day today. I had this kind of call. It's affecting me a little bit, and I don't really know what to do. So I just need a little bit extra love, a little bit extra understanding right now. Or I need a certain meal. There's lots of little ways that you can kind of treat yourself in the early stages after trauma that they seem trivial, but they make a big difference in the long-term scarring of that incident.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you don't want to do, which is what or some people do anyway, is they turn to, alcohol or something.
Alcohol, drugs.
By the way, it's good wine.
Yes, the locals do a good job,
yes,
right?
Thank you.
Yes.
And I feel like it's they don't intend to just fall into the bottle. It's just like, you know what? I'll have a drink after work.
It chills me out, takes the edge off.
To help me sleep. I work graveyards. I got to sleep during the day. I just have a quick cocktail.
Right.
And then it just kind of snowballs from there.
That is it's a true slippery slope, and I fell into it. And I remember at 21 years old, I had a partner was killed on shift, and I went home that night, and I got off work just in time to hit the gas station before they stopped selling alcohol, so I could get a case of beer. And I got home, and I was sitting at my dining room table in the dark, and I had an open beer in front of me. I'd cracked it, took one sip, and set it down, and I kind of looked at it, and I realized, I'm just trying to drink this feeling away. And then I looked back at the last 5 months, and I realized I had been doing that every single night. And I'm not talking 1 or 2 drinks. It was 5, 6, 7, 12 drinks just to chill out. And it hadn't affected my life, to my knowledge, up till then, but I realized what was going on. I said, okay, well, I got to deal with this. And again, our culture is so focused on, had a bad day, have a drink. Yeah. Have a great day, have a drink. Hanging out with your friends, have a drink.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily a bad thing, but like we're talking about, it's really easy to fall into that as your coping mechanism and your only coping mechanism.
Yeah, I think, that's right. I mean, I think it depends on what's your motivation for drinking. Is it because it's just, you're trying to deal with these things?
Right.
And
I like to tell people, I go, listen, just because you're using it as a coping mechanism doesn't mean it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
Moderation and environment is good. So having a drink with somebody else while you're talking about these things, not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing at all. It helps. Again, with some of these interviews, some of these times you're dealing with people, a drink or two is exactly what you need to take the edge off and get people comfortable to talk. It's when you start going beyond that, or when you start doing it alone, or when you start doing it every day. As with anything else, you have to figure out how to balance it. And it all goes back to that culture. I grew up reading the old Joseph Wambach cop books and hanging out with these salty old street dudes who, they just drank. That was what they did.
Yeah.
And you see on the old movies all the time the detective with a bottle in his desk drawer.
Yeah.
I always thought, that's so great. Like, how cool is that?
Or they have choir practice after shift.
Exactly. And I mean, I remember going to choir practice as an explorer just to be a part of the community of it. Obviously, watching these guys drink and having my soda or whatever. And I thought it was the coolest thing in the world.
Yeah.
And I couldn't wait to be old enough to do choir practice with the guys.
And choir practice being after shift, you have a couple of drinks with
exactly.
the guys, outside the building somewhere.
Right, you have a spot to meet, whether it's a bar or a parking lot or wherever, and everybody goes and they kind of do their own debrief, de-stress period after shift. And it can be a really positive thing because it builds camaraderie amongst your team. It builds that bond with your people. It gives you that opportunity to talk to them outside of calls.
Do you think people have gone away from that today?
Absolutely. I mean, again, I'm not involved in the day-to-day anymore, but I do think it's less of a tradition now. It's less of a thing. I think now, guys are so busy. They're working overtime. They've got to deal with the kids. I've got to be home to my husband or wife. I've got a side job. I've got this or that. They're just too busy.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of guys as well that kind of hit a point where they don't want anything to do with the job beyond when they have to be there.
Yeah.
So they're going to come in. They're going to do their 10s or their 12s. And then they're gone.
Yeah.
And they can't wait to get out. And again, good and bad. There's positives to that, not making the job your life, but we spend more time with the people we work with than we do with our families in a lot of cases. Mm-hmm. So it's really important to have a good relationship there. Yeah. And, I used to do this with my dispatchers. I would make sure my dispatchers knew my name, knew my face, knew my story, knew my family history, knew what was going on, because if I'm more than just a voice on the radio, they're going to care a lot more about helping me.
Wow.
And that doesn't mean they don't care about the guys that are just a call sign. But if they think about me as Nick, and I've got a dog called Toby, and I've got family that do this, and I do this on the weekends, and oh, remember that time we went on? That's a lot more powerful than, oh, that's 1676. You're a person now.
Yeah.
So much of our job makes you a robot. It makes you a number. It just makes you another uniform. And the more we do this with our partners, where we're people, the easier it is for us to care about each other. Same with our community. It's no different, And we've lost a lot of that because staffing is short, and the call volumes are up, and the reporting has gotten a little bit more complex, and all these things. There's just so much to do. People don't take the time to do that. So, really important, and some of those traditions as well, I think, are vital to the positive parts of our culture, because it's unlike anything else.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like talking to different people too it's like the old traditions that were there they're kind of going away from those.
Yes.
And like you said, it serves a purpose.
Yeah, and as long as you keep that purpose in mind, and practice it responsibly, it's a wonderful thing. So maybe it's something where you just tell your shift, hey, one day a week, on our Friday maybe, we're going to meet up for choir practice. And even if you're with a shift full of CrossFitters and non-drinkers and healthy people, okay, well, go find a salad bar.
And you'll know if they do CrossFit because
You'll
they'll tell
know.
you.
They'll just ask Brad. They will tell you. Hi, Brad. Go find a salad bar. Go find a gym. Choir practice doesn't have to be let's sit around and drink. It could be go find the best taco truck in town and go stand around for 20 minutes and just shoot the breeze. All it comes down to is building that camaraderie, building that culture in a positive way again. The thin blue line is not meant to be, we protect each other at all costs,
right.
We never ever snitch.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be, you're my family, we have a very difficult job to do in a very specialized position in our communities, and we need to take that seriously, but we also need to understand that we're people still.
What does that mean to you, the
thin blue line? I think, and I think it's even more meaningful now than it ever has been with so much controversy around our profession. The thin blue line to me is a group of people who have chosen to take on a very difficult, very thankless job that puts us at a great deal of risk. We may not be the top 10 most dangerous job in the country, but it's a damn dangerous job. It's a stressful job. There's a lot of pitfalls that you can find. And so the thin blue line is a way for us to band together. It's a way for us to respect that position. And in my eyes, it's intended to remind us of the importance of the work we do. It doesn't make us better than anybody. It doesn't make us special. It just makes us different. And it makes us valuable in our own way. Society needs us. And we need to respect that. We need to be worthy of that. And so I think that to me is what that's all about.
Yeah.
And it doesn't just mean our relationship with the public. It's our relationship with each other.
Yeah, definitely.
There needs to be more camaraderie there.
Yeah. And unfortunately, you have some people that think, oh, that just means that, they just protect each other.
Right.
Like you said, no matter what. It's
right.
just
We never talk.
This wall of silence is what happens.
And
which is completely untrue because, listen, if you don't watch the news and see cops getting prosecuted and things like that, I mean...
My answer, I hear all the time, the good cops protect the bad ones. And I say, well, who do you think arrests the bad ones?
Yeah.
It's cops. It may not be guys from the same agency, but it's cops. And there are so many more of the good ones than the bad ones but we have kind of fallen back on this bad apples theory. And there's a lot of talking points about, well, it's just statistically, it's a couple of bad guys. Well, that's true. But the good guys also have to go out of their way now to make up for the damage the bad guys are doing. And if you're not going out there and being extra courteous to the public and extra cooperative with whatever community event you happen to be around, and if you're not going out of your way to show the community what kind of people we really are, well, you're part of the problem. And obviously, again, there's a lot of factors going into it with call levels and staffing shortages, and I've got my own life to deal with outside of this, and so on and so forth. But we need to do a better job representing ourselves and showing why we're the good guys.
Yeah. Yeah, that's huge. Because as I mentioned before on another episode, all it takes is for one person in some unknown town, in some unknown place, to do something wrong, and now everyone is looked at the same exact way.
We all
and
pay
you're
for
taking
it.
back so many steps of progress. you know?
Absolutely. And that doesn't just go for the bad shoots or the potential racist stops or whatever else is kind of the hot button topic of the minute. That goes for every single interaction we have. You know, the soccer mom pulling up in her van to ask you about if you can do the same thing she saw on CSI, or the annoying wannabe cop security guard who just wants to talk about the job. It's a pain in the neck, we all know it, but sometimes you have to spend that extra time. Give them that feedback and give them that positive interaction, and then they're gonna go to their buddies and go, all right, I know we hear a lot of bad stuff about cops, but let me tell you about this one guy.
Yeah.
He was great.
Yeah.
And that was one of the most rewarding things for me after working in the jail and going to the street, was having these guys who were hardened criminals and shot callers and gangsters and all these dudes who would then come running up to me with their families in tow. And they'd go, Deputy, oh, this is my wife, and this is my kids, and this is my brother, and this is that cop I told you about. We had a little scuffle, but he's cool though, he's cool. and I always attributed it to, I would give them respect. I'm happy to give it first because it doesn't cost me a damn thing. And if you give it back, great. And if you don't, that's fine too, because I know I'm doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And that, obviously that integrity thing, right? Are you doing the right thing when nobody's looking?
Yeah.
And that was the most rewarding thing for me, was to get that feedback from people that maybe I had to go hands-on with them and use force on them in the jail or in the streets. And then 6 months later, they would see me and come thank me for it. Wait, you're thanking me for beating you up? What? And they'd go, no, I needed it, but you were cool about it. You didn't go too far, and as soon as the cuffs were on, you were cool.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's just business. I don't take it personal.
Yeah.
You're not cussing me out, you're cussing my badge out.
Yeah.
Well, that's fine. That's part of the job.
Even though you fought with them and they fought with you, I guess there's still a level of respect you show each other as,
Right.
as human beings, and you don't.
Yeah, it seems a little cavalier to say it this way, but to me, it was always a little bit of a game. It was sometimes you're going to win and sometimes I'm going to win. As long as we all go home at the end of the day, we're good.
Yeah. And
some dudes are just criminals. And they're not necessarily bad dudes, they're just criminals. That's who they are. That's where life put them. And you hear all the time that the line between cop and criminal is very thin because we have to understand how they think and they try to understand how we think. And if it weren't for a couple of mentors or a couple of decisions I made in my life, I could easily have been in their shoes. And, especially after I got hurt and went through addiction and all that stuff, it really brought that home even more of how close we all are to being that guy, no matter what you think ahead of time. And so having that respect and being able to exercise it even in a stressful moment, and knowing that even if you have to fight a guy, once those cuffs go on, it's over and I won.
Yeah.
I win. You're going to jail and I'm going home to see my pretty girlfriend, or to eat a taco or whatever. You're going to be eating jail food and I'm not.
Right.
That's a win. What's it hurt me to be nice to this guy?
Yeah.
Nothing at all. And maybe he'll think twice about sucker punching me next time.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but anytime I can avoid a sucker punch is a good day for me.
That's good. Yeah. That'd be great. Yeah. And oh, thank you. And like you said, once the cuffs are on, that's it. There's no mess talking.
Right.
There's no making you feel demeaning you or anything like that. It's just
right.
Hey, this is my job and that's yours, and this is what we do. You know what you signed up for, and so did I.
Today I won.
Yeah, and tomorrow you may.
Right. Maybe next time you'll run and you'll get away.
Exactly.
Because I'm not a good runner. And that's all right too, because I know where to find you.
Yeah.
And that, I think, it's a serious job. There are serious moments. There are big implications for everything we do, but relax a little bit.
Yeah.
You can't take it personally. Again, that thick skin. You have to have thick skin doing this. Anybody who's worn a badge for any amount of time can tell you they've been called every name in the book. Pick a racist name and I've been called it. I don't care what color I am, I've been called it. Pick a family member and they've been threatened. I've heard everything in the book, as have pretty much every other cop. And it doesn't affect my life. It doesn't change anything. It's part of the game.
Yeah.
And the more we keep that in mind, the more we're able to, again, treat people like humans, give them the basic respect. I don't care what I think of a person. I'm going to give them the basic human respect until they give me a damn good reason not to.
Sure.
And everything's easier that way.
Yeah.
It's less work to be nice than to be a dick.
Yeah.
Which seems to really shock people. They have a hard time with that.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I mean, I'm sure there are that small percentage of people that become law enforcement because they want to they want to exhibit that authority. They want to be
the lunch money guys.
Yeah, yeah, they get their lunch money taken. And that's unfortunate. I mean, I guess in every profession you're going to have people that are there for the wrong reasons.
Sure.
And it certainly happens in law enforcement. And we see it. We see it all over TV and YouTube.
And you know, and I'll go back to you know, my little crusade. That's where the culture comes in. If we have a culture of communication and openness and comfort with our coworkers, it's a lot easier to go up to one of those guys, because again, we can spot them pretty early. You can usually tell when that guy is just trying to show everyone how big he is. And if the whole shift can sit him down at choir practice and go, listen, dude, you're doing this all wrong. I don't know why you're here, but let's discuss that. We see you behaving this way and it's not okay. That's not how we do things. That's not how this profession does things.
Yeah.
We can't just accept that those guys are going to be there and that there's nothing we can do, because that's wrong, you know? And yeah, those lunch money guys, man, they give us all a bad name. They make it real tough for the rest of us to do things the easy way.
Yeah.
So
that's too bad.
It is. It really is. But again, it's a relatively easy fix, which is kind of the incredible part to me, is how simple it is to avoid most of those issues with guys like that. And it's personal accountability. It's shift accountability. It's the supervisors knowing their guys, knowing their girls, knowing how they behave, and taking the time to observe them on calls and go, all right, well, this is how they deal with an easy call. This is how they deal with, you know, a BS call. This is how they deal with a high stress incident. And once you know that, then you can kind of pay attention.
Yeah.
And you can help them, and you can guide them, and you can give them the heads up of like, hey, do you realize that once you get a guy in cuffs, you spend a lot of time jaw-jacking at him? Why do you do that? Oh, well, because F that guy. That's not the right attitude. You're better than that. We're better than that.
Yeah.
You know, and explaining why that's a problem.
Yeah.
Because a lot of guys don't get that ripples. They think it's just them and the guy. That's the whole community that's affected by that.
Yeah, that's a great point. And in order to do that, the supervisors have to leave the office to go out there and
absolutely. And it's tough, right? Because you know, you guys have so many other things to worry about, and you've got so many people on a shift that you have to supervise and deal with, and who knows what the correct answer is to that. But choir practice helps, because if as a sergeant you can sit down with your team for an hour after the work week, and you can talk about the calls you guys had, or you can hear the way they interact with each other. You can see the pecking order, you know, in your shift, whether it's by seniority or by experience or just by personality, and you can go, that guy's not really gelling with everybody. I wonder why. Is it because there's a problem with the shift and that guy's trying to do things the right way, or vice versa? Or whatever it is. You know, as with so much, it's knowing that baseline. You know, how many times have you gone out on patrol and you try to tell a rookie, okay, you got to know what the neighborhood is. You have to know the beats of the neighborhood. What cars belong where, what people belong where, what's the normal business hours of being open. The same thing goes for people.
Yeah.
If you know the regular flow of things, you can tell when something's off and you can address it.
Yeah, exactly. You have that baseline, just like the radio. You know when someone's acting normal on the radio, and you know when they got something. They can just say their call sign, and you know, oh, hold on, they got something going on. Let me start heading that way.
Absolutely. You know, I was told early on, my first training officer, in fact, at the jail in Sac, he goes, every time you key up your radio, I want you to sound like you're waking up from a nap. Really? Why? And he goes, well, because if you get in the habit of sounding like you're sleepy every time you talk on the radio, when things go south and your heart rate jacks up and you can't help it, people are going to notice. And sure enough, several times I got into a situation where I didn't even realize I was jacked up, and I would call for a cover unit or put out an update, and people would perk up and they'd start coming my way because they go, oh, that doesn't sound right.
Yeah.
And it's so many of these things, these little lessons are applicable in every area of our job. The mental health side. I teach all the time, I go, notice when one of your guys is acting different. If you don't know how he acts normally, you're never going to be able to spot the warning signs.
Yeah.
You need to pay attention to those things, and it doesn't take a lot of effort. Sit around at briefing, and instead of goofing on your phone or reading your reports or, you know, thinking about that girl you met at the bar last weekend, look around the table. See how people are behaving. Okay, well, it's day shift, so usually everyone's a little sleepy, they're getting their coffee, maybe they're a little grouchy. Okay, one day a guy comes in and he's not drinking his coffee, and he's not talkative like normal, and he's keeping his head down, and he, you know, it looks like he's got a headache. Okay, what's going on? Is he hungover? Why is he hungover on a work day? That's not normal for him.
Yeah.
Whatever. And that's the only way you can address these things before they become a real problem.
Yeah. Wow, it's just paying attention.
That's
to,
it.
to everything around you.
We're trained observers, right? We need to use those skills everywhere.
That's a good point, yeah.
And it's just, again, it's one of those things that it won't take a lot to implement it. It just takes time, and it takes people putting a little bit of effort into it and making it a normal part of the training process. Which it's relatively simple. It's not easy, but it's simple. You know.
Now you mentioned you got hurt.
Yeah.
This is still at Sac County?
No, so I worked in Sac for a couple of years, and then I transferred down here to Marin County.
Okay.
Which was a significant culture shock.
And this is still in Northern California?
Still in Northern California, yeah. So I always tell people, Marin County is just the other side of the Golden Gate Bridge.
Okay.
So it's a relatively, it's an incredibly affluent area. The joke I always make is I had to forget a lot of 4-letter words when I moved there. It's a lot different than working South Sacramento or working in a jail where you speak the language of the people. And the language of the people here is expensive cars and big houses.
Yeah.
So came to Marin, and I had trouble adjusting to the department. And a lot of that was me being stuck in my mindset from the previous agency. A lot of it was just me being young and immature. And then some of it was the culture of the department. I think I take most of the blame for that, But I ended up I got really lucky and got a job working on a rescue boat.
Did you kind of know what you're getting into when?
Oh, excuse me. The doorbell's going off. Hey. He'll stop quick.
Did you know what you're getting into when you went from Sarasota to Marin, as far as the culture and
To an extent, I did.
Actually, you want to pin on the other side.
Oh, pin on this one.
Turn this way.
That's a good point. See, this is why you're the professional.
I don't know anything.
There we go. I did know. I knew that it was going to be different. I knew that the type of calls I was going to be dealing with would be different. I knew that. I certainly knew that departments have different ways of doing things. I don't think I was prepared for just how different it was. And going from a really large department, over 2,000 deputies at the time, to a couple hundred. I think we were 160 sworn, something like that. The small department politics were something I was not ready for.
Okay.
And kind of for lack of a better term, kind of the good old boy feeling. And I did my best with it, but I don't think my best was adequate, at the time. And but it was, so I ended up getting really lucky and getting this job on the rescue boat,
Sure.
which for me was a dream come true. My office was the Golden Gate Bridge in Angel
awesome.
Island.
That's gotta be
it's
awesome.
incredible, right? So there were downsides. I spent every day cold and wet. People used to joke, "Oh, so what, you spend your days fishing and looking at girls in bikinis?" I said, obviously you've never been on the San Francisco Bay, because anybody that's wearing a bikini on that bay is not somebody you want to look at in a bikini. But I got to do a type of police work that involves overwhelmingly people that are happy to see you. You put people on the water and they're going to wave at you with their whole hand. You're not getting the one-finger salutes anymore.
Yeah.
Rarely. And sometimes I deserve
Like you're number one.
Yeah, exactly. That's the one. Yeah,
Okay.
it's the only one I know. But and I got to very literally save lives almost every shift, pulling people out of the water, pulling capsized boats, and all those kind of things. And after about a year doing that, I ended up getting hurt recovering a body off of Angel Island. Bad situation, bad lift, and I hurt my back. It was nerve damage in 5 places and 3 vertebrae, and then some structural damage low down, bulging compressed disc with a pinched nerve and whatever.
Recovering a body like.
Yeah, she had jumped off the bridge.
Oh, wow.
We later found out.
That's right. They did jump off that bridge.
Oh, they do it plenty. Yeah, that was. I've loved that bridge my whole life. That bridge has held a significant place in my life since I was born, and seeing that side of it and kind of serving that bridge was a life-altering experience. It was, and granted, there are a lot of guys that dealt with it a lot more regularly than me. The Bridge Patrol guys, the Coast Guard guys from Station Golden Gate down there. So she had jumped off. We later found out about 3 weeks before, and she washed up on the island, kind of on a beach that was hard to access. Luckily, about a week before, I had gone around the whole island and done depth soundings and found places I could beach a boat and all this stuff just in case of a crisis. So we went from, we talked about, you go from one call, 1 minute to something else totally different. 1 minute we were circling around this Russian billionaire's yacht off of Sausalito, and then 10 minutes later I was beaching a boat going to recover a corpse that looked like something out of a movie.
Sure.
Badly decomposed and missing a lot of flesh, and it was one of those that, as my therapist later called it, it was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back for me with PTSD and kind of the trauma side of things. And when I went to lift her, it felt like someone stabbed me, underneath my right shoulder blade. It was an immediate thing. So we finished the call, as we all do it. You kind of go, okay, well, I can still feel everything. So, all right, we'll finish the call and I'll deal with it later. It's not an issue right now.
Yeah.
So we got her back to the mainland and did all the coroner stuff, and then I told my partner, I said, hey, I got to go to the hospital, man. I did something. I screwed myself up. And that day is probably the most transformative day in my life to this point. I was just a little over 8 years ago now. And that was the day that I really began losing my trust in the system. I lost my trust in my department, in my supervisors, in my doctors. It was a bad scene, man. It really, and it's something that affects me every day still. I ended up with a bad case of PTSD, depression, anxiety, the whole nine. As a result of that injury, I ended up getting addicted to painkillers. And so I was taking 30 pills twice a day, morphine and oxy and all kinds of stuff. And they were all prescribed. I never took one I wasn't prescribed because I was terrified of getting addicted. And I didn't realize I was addicted until I quit.
And this is all while you're still with the
roughly, yeah.
PD.
So I was off for about 3 weeks, went back on light duty. So this happened. I got hurt in August, was back in light duty, by mid-September, and then December 23rd, I had my first major surgery. Both kidneys and my liver were operated on because of a misdiagnosis by the work comp doctor. And a couple months later, I went back to work on patrol. I lost my boat spot, went back to patrol. And I made it about 3 months of incredible pain and a really, really bad attitude before they finally just pulled me off for good. And it was an eye-opening experience to see just how much that law enforcement family means when you really get into trouble. I had a couple of people that were really great about trying to reach out, even when I was not responsive at all. And when I was responsive, it wasn't pleasant. And but they were diligent, and there was a couple of them, just a handful that stuck with it. But most of the people I thought were my friends just disappeared, out of sight, out of mind. And I dealt with a lot of the jokes from guys about, oh, when are you going to quit milking it and come back? And, oh, you're still riding that thing out? Come on, dude. And at first it was a little funny. I could laugh with it, and then it got old real fast because I go, that's all I want. I'm just trying to come back.
Right.
They won't fix me. They won't help me. And I learned exactly what the workers' comp system is all about, which is a broken system that's designed to work against the injured worker. And my department was less than useless. In fact, in several cases, they made the situation much worse.
Yeah.
My union was less than, or they were useless. They were terrible. It was a nightmare, and it ended up being, the whole process took almost 5 years to get complete.
Wow.
4.5 years or so to really get finished. And of course, through it all, I felt totally alone. I felt like I had been abandoned and just discarded by my department and by the law enforcement community as a whole.
There was no support. They didn't check in on you. Hey, how you doing?
Again, early on there was a couple people, but the department itself never did.
Nothing from them.
The union never did. Due to an error with HR, I went 6 months with no work comp, no disability, no income at all. They cut my benefits off. So I was on my own trying to figure it all out. I ended up like 150 grand in medical debt. And finally I got my benefits reinstated, got the error corrected. And after like 3 or 4 never returned calls to my union, about 3 days after my benefits got reinstated, I got a phone call from a guy who I had worked with and had been on a first name basis with, calling me Nicholas, which I never go by unless I'm in trouble. And he, oh, hello, Nicholas, this is so-and-so. And I was like, yeah, I know. We've worked together.
Yeah.
We used to be friends.
Oh, wow.
And he goes, and you could tell he was a little flustered. And he says, well, we noticed, I'm calling on behalf of the union, and we noticed that you've got your benefits back, and we just want to get you current on your union dues so we can, start serving you again. And I go,
wow.
Excuse me? And I was sitting in a Staples parking lot, and I gave him about a 15-minute ass chewing. And I was fully expecting somebody walking by was going to call the cops out, because I was letting it fly. And weirdly enough, I never heard from the union again.
Oh, man. They just, nothing from them the whole time, and then, hey, you got money now.
I would get cards occasionally. They had one of the civilian clerks in the jail, on behalf of the union, would send out like a greeting card for Valentine's Day or Thanksgiving or 4th of July. Like, it was, random holidays.
Yeah.
And they were very thoughtful. It would be, Nick, we're thinking of you. Hope all is well. Sincerely, the union. But because of everything else going on, they just felt like a slap in the face to me. Oh, you got time to send me these, but you don't have time to return my phone calls.
Yeah.
You don't have time to do the one job you're supposed to be doing. And after a couple of years and some intense therapy, I finally I realized that I was really angry without ever expressing that anger to anybody in the department. So I scheduled a meeting with my undersheriff and the professional standards lieutenant, and I scheduled a meeting with the new head of the new union president, who was a buddy of mine. And the meetings went basically the same way both times, where I sat down and I joke, I call it, I dumped my purse out. I gave them all of my emotions. I gave them all of the real feelings I had. And I said, this is the way I feel. This is why I feel this way. This is what I believe you guys have done wrong. And then, because I don't believe in presenting a problem without a solution, I said, this is what I think we should do about it. I want to help. I want to make sure it's too late to help me, but I want to make sure this doesn't happen to anybody else, because I knew other guys were going through it. And the response I got from the union president was, wow, that's a problem. And he said, I'm working with a couple other guys that are going through a similar thing. And he said, we've got a meeting next week. I'm going to take this to them, and then I'm going to call you, and we're going to work on this. Great. And I never heard from him again. The undersheriff and the lieutenant kind of played the company man role, and I lost a lot of respect for him that day. The undersheriff, who was a guy that I had kind of back and forth feelings towards, but always respected. He was always a good guy doing what he thought was the right thing, which I respect a lot, even if I don't agree with him. Mm-hmm. He was surprisingly understanding and responsive. And that day, he wrote me a card, and he had a very distinct writing style. And I still have the card. I use it as a teaching aid now. And the card was something along the lines of, Dear Nick, what you told us today was a scathing indictment of the way we do business. I give you my word, both personally and professionally, we are going to deal with it. We are going to make it better, make sure it doesn't happen again, whatever. Sincerely, his first name. Mm-hmm. And that was April 23rd of 2013 that I got that note. And I have never heard a word from him again. And it really showed me where the priorities are with these guys. And now, that's not every department. That's not every cop. That's not even every person in that department. But unfortunately, as we've talked about, is sometimes one guy's actions will affect the whole industry. And I went a couple years where I didn't even want to look at a cop car. I still don't drive through my old patrol areas from my second agency, because it triggers me. It makes me mad. It makes me upset. It makes me sad. And it really is, it's still 8 years later, feels like one of the biggest betrayals I could ever experience. Because I signed on, idealistically, with the understanding that I'm going to go do this dangerous job. I'm going to go put myself on the line and give my community and this department the best I can. And in return, if anything ever happens to me, you're going to be there to take care of me, to help me, and to make me as whole as can be again. And that was not the reality of it. I did my part. They did not do theirs. And when I gave them another opportunity to rectify the situation and to do their part, they shined me on, and then they kicked me out. To the point where, I don't have, they had issued me my retirement ID card, which was really important to me. That was one of the few physical reminders I have that I did that job, because they wouldn't let me buy my badge. Oh, the union will give you a flat badge. That'll be. I don't want a flat badge. I want my badge. I want the badge I wore and went through all this crap with.
Right.
We don't do that. Okay. So the ID card was as close as I was going to get to that. So they issued it to me. The undersheriff signed off on it. And then 3 days later, I got a phone call from the sergeant who was in charge of that saying, well, we need your ID card back. And he had left several messages on my machine while I was flying to Vegas. And I called him back from the airport and I said, well, okay, I understand you need it, but I can't help you. I'm not in the state. I said, so I'll be back Tuesday. If you want it then, let me know. Well, that's not going to work. I go, okay, well, come on out to Vegas. You can come get it, but I'm not coming back.
Right.
And Tuesday I landed, and I had several missed calls from him again. Called him up, and he said, hey, I need that card tonight. I said, well, I'm hungover. I just got off an airplane. I'm not driving down there tonight. I said, you want it, come and get it. And in hindsight, I should have never given the guy my address. I should have never answered his calls. I had a legitimate right to that ID card. I earned it. I retired in good standing with an injury caused by my employment, you know, the whole thing. Half an hour later, he was at my door, and he took the card, barely said a word to me, and drove away, and I never heard from him again. And I later found out that the whole thing happened because he was up for a lieutenant's promotion. And I guess the sheriff saw that I had my card and my retirement wasn't completed yet. We knew I wasn't coming back, but the formalities weren't done. And he told him, he said, well, you either get that card back or you don't get your promotion. Okay. So, and I hate sounding like I've been victimized, you know, but it was one of those things that, again, it really showed me where the priorities lie. And it showed me what the law enforcement family, as they spoke about it, was all about. Because shortly after I got hurt, one of the command staff got injured in an off-duty accident. And it was a very serious accident, and thankfully he recovered and everything was fine, but everything I saw from the response to his accident was exactly the opposite of what I got. He had people going to his house, he had people bringing him meals, people were talking about him, oh, I love this family, I love all this stuff, and da-da-da-da-da. I was like, well, that happened off-duty. Mine happened on duty. Where was that for me? You know, I'm bitter and I'm angry, and I'm just sitting here going, you know, F this and F that, and
We feel betrayed.
oh, absolutely, and abandoned at the time when I needed these people.
Yeah.
I was lost. I was addicted to these pills. I could barely stand up. You know, I'm in my mid-20s and I'm walking around like an 80-year-old man. I could barely move half the time, and they didn't care. And it's, I mean, again, you know, as I'm talking about it, I'm like emotional, and I'm feeling all that kind of churning rage again. And it's so that was kind of, again, what spurred me into trying to correct that. Trying to help guys understand the effects of how we behave towards each other, and what happens to an injured officer. What is the reality of the workers' comp system and the retirement system, and trying to get your benefits and trying to deal with the doctors and the disability stuff, and then to try and find another job after the fact. As it turns out, I'm not cut out for regular employment anymore, as a result of my injuries, as a result of my mental stuff, and as a result of my personality from doing this job. It's really hard for me to go sit in a cubicle and have some guy in short sleeves and a tie boss me around and act like everything is life or death. Yeah. You know, every cop knows when you do a job where people's lives depend on the decisions you make, working in an office, it's hard to take it seriously. Right. You know.
How did that? Where did that go with the being addicted? I mean, what ultimately?
So I woke up one day. I was dating a really wonderful girl who was also a cop. You know, significantly older than me, so she was a lot more experienced, which was really helpful. She was able to guide me through a lot of stuff and really help me. And I just woke up one day and I realized I'm done. I can't do this anymore. And so I broke up with her, moved out of the house, back in with my parents, and took all my pills. And I dumped him out. I said, I'm done. I'm not doing it anymore. I was tired of being a zombie. I was tired of throwing up every day, and you know, and all the weight I had gained and all this stuff. And most of it didn't help the pain. I was just doing it because the doctors told me to. And so I went cold turkey that day. I kept one bottle of morphine that I had just refilled, 60 pills or whatever. And I kept that as a, you know, to keep me honest, so to speak. It was like my little challenge to myself of like, you're better than this. You're not gonna let this little bottle beat you. And so I kept it on my bathroom counter. And for a long time, I would talk to it every day. And I would tell it, you're not beating me. I'm not opening you up. I am not gonna do that shit again. And so it was 3 weeks or so of detox, which was hell on earth. I mean, that was never something I want to repeat. And it gave me a lot of respect for addicts and for people that deal with substance abuse issues in a way that I didn't have before. I understand now how powerful it is. I understand what the cravings are like, and I understand that after, you know, I've been clean off the pills now for a little over 7 years. And it's not something I crow about a lot, you know, but it's very quietly one of the proudest things in my life. One of the proudest accomplishments is that I beat those damn things. And I've stayed clean for this long. And it really is something that changes you going through that. And when I go to the doctors now, I have to tell them every single time, I am an addict. I'm not a recovered addict. There's no such thing. You are recovering, because all it takes is one wrong step and I'll be right back in that. You know, in the same way you talk to an alcoholic and they go, I can't even take a sip, because if I take one sip, I can take another sip. And if I can take another sip, and it's small steps, but it gets bad quick. And so, you know, there's a big part of me that goes, yeah, I don't think I would get addicted again. But I also, the rational part of me knows that that's ridiculous. So, you know, I've had to find other ways to deal with my pain. I've had to find other ways to deal with injuries. You know, and for me, I've found some things that work, and you know, I know a lot of cop buddies don't necessarily agree with it. You know, for me, medical marijuana was a lifesaver. It helped me get off the pills. It helped me deal with all of my injuries and surgeries since then. You know, if I'm in the hospital, I'll tell the doctors, listen, if you got to give me something, do it, but I won't be in control of it. You give me what you think I need, and keep it as low as we can, you know. But I found that I have to repeat that to every doctor and every nurse I talk to, because I'm not willing to take the risk, you know. So it's something that now every time I hear about somebody getting hurt, I try to reach out to them and go, hey man, I've been there, I get it, I'm here. Let me just warn you about this.
Yeah. And
I'm here to talk, I'll check in with you, whatever. And I want to make sure that other people going through this stuff don't have to deal with the same things I did. You know, I went through all the hard stuff already. Why would you repeat it if you can just learn from me, you know? So taking something bad and making it as good as I can, you know?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And that's too bad that there's this negative stigma around, you know, marijuana and things like that, because I've heard lots of stories where, you know, it helps people, and, you know, it's just...
Same as anything else, moderation,
yeah.
Right? And knowing when the right time to use it is. You know, like... So I'm basically a daily user at this point, and this month, you know, I try to go 1 month a year where I don't use, don't use any. And that's partially to make sure that I don't have a dependence on it. And it's partially just to kind of reset everything, be clear-headed for a while, you know, the whole thing. And the biggest problem I have when I get off is the nightmares come back. And, you know, I start getting afraid to go to sleep again. Whereas, you know, on a normal night, I can sit out here on my deck, I can bring my book out, I can hang out with my dog, and I'll have a smoke, read my book, chill out. It's kind of like a ritual that I have. It helps me calm down, centers my mind a little bit, and I can go to bed and my head hits the pillow, and 10 minutes later I'm asleep. And I don't get a lot of sleep, but I get really good sleep. It may only be 3 or 4 hours, but I wake up refreshed. Yeah. And I usually wake up stone cold sober again and ready to do whatever I want to do for the day. Yeah. So, you know, I tell people all the time, you know, because I smoke weed, I drink a lot less, which, as a guy that's had problems with drinking in the past, that's a godsend. I can drink responsibly and safely because I don't do it hardly ever anymore. I can, you know, I've reset my relationship with that. I don't use it as a coping mechanism anymore. I use it as something I'm hanging out with somebody, having a nice chat. So, and like with the mental illness, the stigma around marijuana is starting to change. Yeah. Legalization is coming, and people are realizing that it's not the end of the world. People are realizing that a dude being stoned walking down the street is less dangerous than most sober people walking down the street. And I ask cops all the time, I go, listen, I understand you don't agree with weed, and that's cool, that's totally reasonable. I said, but how many stoners have you had that tried to get real violent with you? How many drunks?
Yeah, I was about to say, as opposed to, you know, drunks. You go to a bar fight, you don't go to a
you don't go to a stoner fight. Yeah, it just doesn't happen.
They're just all chilling and hungry.
Yeah, it's, you know, happy, hungry, sleepy. If I got to arrest someone, that's the guy I want. Yeah. You know, so I just try and for me, again, it's like so many other things. It's, let me show you how it's helped me. It's only one guy's experience, but if my experience can help other people have a better understanding of the positive sides of it, we can balance out the negative a little bit. And the attitudes are changing. The awareness is getting out, the education is getting out, and the culture is shifting to a point where they understand that weed isn't this dangerous gateway drug. In my opinion, and this is just an opinion, the only reason weed is really dangerous is because it's illegal. Most of the dangers of weed come from dealing with dangerous people selling it, or people trying to rip off people selling it, or all this stuff. Well, you don't have quite the same problems as you do with alcohol. Why? Because it's not illegal. Different problems, certainly. You know, it's not problemless, but so, and when used properly and when used with care and education, it can be really beneficial.
Yeah.
I absolutely credit weed with keeping me off the pills, with helping me fight the suicidal thoughts and the mental illness, the depression, the PTSD issues. You know, some of the work I do, you know, I work from home a lot. And some of the work I do, I'm able to do it a lot easier if I've got a little buzz on, because my emotions are calmer. I'm able to focus a little bit better. You know, the creative stuff, you know, if I'm writing or if I'm, you know, some of the counseling that I do, it just works a little bit better because now I can zero in.
Sure.
And I can really pay attention, and I'm really focusing on details and nuance and tone and all these different things. So it's again, it's balance. It's finding the right amounts at the right times and being responsible with it.
Yeah. Now you mentioned not only did you have some physical injuries, but there's some definite
mental stuff. And for as bad as the physical stuff was and is, you know, I still deal with it regularly, but the mental stuff is really what affects my day to day. I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress, you know, anxiety, depression, and a borderline manic depressive, basically a very, very low level bipolar, which scared the crap out of me when I heard that. That one scared me over anything else because I didn't know. You know, I didn't know what it was. And, you know, what was explained to me was that it's just your emotions go a little bigger and a little lower than normal people's. You're just outside the normal range, that's all. Oh, okay, well, that's not so scary. And as a result of all that stuff, as a result of the betrayal and abandonment feelings, as a result of the injuries and the debt and the lack of purpose and identity, and I ended up becoming suicidal. And you want to talk about stigma. That is one that, for all the progress we've made, there's a long way to go there. People have a hard time talking about suicide and talking to people who are suicidal and understanding what it's all about. You know, and I hear a lot of cops that talk about suicide as, well, quit being a bitch. If you want to kill yourself, go kill yourself. I don't want to listen to you whine. I go, that's the wrong freaking attitude.
Yeah.
You know, people that are suicidal are not selfish. They're not quitters. They're not losers. You're dealing with a very serious mental problem. And I read an analogy, and I'm going to butcher it, but the gist will be there of essentially, you know, we just passed 9/11. How many people did you see jumping out of those towers that day? Did they jump because they wanted to die? No. They jumped because they had an option of, I'm either going to burn in this building or I'm going to jump out and make it quick. That's a difficult decision to make, but when you think about it that way, I don't want to die, I just don't want to do this anymore. I can't keep living like this. And that was for me what it is, what it was, what it always will be is, I just don't want to keep living the way that I've had to live. And it's taken me a long time to get to a point where I can kind of be rational about these things. And, you know, I was telling you earlier that one of the hardest things that I do when I go talk to cops or military folks or other first responders about the mental illness, about the suicide, about suicide prevention, all this stuff, is I tell the story of my first suicide plan. And I've told this story in front of hundreds of cops at this point. And every time I tell it, I still get that churning feeling in my stomach of how are they going to respond to this? And should I ever say this stuff out loud? Because nobody does. And that to me is usually a sure sign that I have to talk about it. As soon as I feel like, well, nobody else talks about this and this is really scary, I go, okay, well, now I got to do it because it's important. So I'll tell it here because it's got to get out there, and I think it's an important lesson for people. So during the initial years after I got retired out and was dealing with my department and the abandonment and the response I got from them, I was angry, really, really, really angry. And I used to think to myself, and occasionally I said it out loud, which then I would have to deal with the consequences, which were never fun, of people talk about folks that have PTSD or that are suicidal like we're dangerous, which in some ways we are. And that has to be paid attention to. It has to be dealt with. But you can't treat us like ticking time bombs and then also treat us like shit. So I would have guys that would talk to me like I was this time bomb waiting to go off, and then turn around and talk to me like I was like just this dirtbag. And I'd say, if you're so nervous about me being dangerous and you know I've got access to firearms, why are you treating me this way? Those don't add up. You need to figure out what's going on. So after not getting any response, any positive response from my department, from my coworkers, from the people, post even, the Peace Officer Standards and Training, I went to them several times to try and work on this and build some training and build some education. And the response I always got was, well, we don't really feel like there's a need for that kind of training. And or they would go, it's not that big of a problem. So in my mindset at the time, which was absolutely unstable and not clear-headed, I decided that the only way to get anybody talking about this was to make a statement. And I was absolutely suicidal. I really didn't want to keep living. Life did not feel worth it. There was no reason to keep going. So I was like, well, if I'm going to kill myself, I'm not going to go do it quietly somewhere. I'm going to make a statement. So I thought about where is the best way to make that statement? And then I thought about, where do cops feel the safest? You feel the safest in your station. Probably in the admin hallway. Excuse my dog, I apologize. Bad timing, Tobe. So my thought process went like this. Well, the place that cops, keep pulling off my microphone, I'm really good at this.
That's okay.
The place that cops feel the safest and feel like there's the least chance of something happening is the admin hallway. The 4th floor, the 7th floor, the mahogany row, whatever you want to call it.
Upstairs,
where the suits live. So my thought was, well, I'm going to go to the people that have the power to fix this and haven't. I'm going to go to the people that have been told that this is a problem, have been shown that this is a problem, and have refused to act on it. And I'm going to make them listen. So when I do my training classes, I usually start off by telling them the story of, imagine you're upstairs, you're in the mahogany row, you're making copies, you're checking a mailbox, you're doing whatever. And you see a guy that's been hurt for about 3 months come off the elevator, come off the stairs wearing his training uniform. Polo shirt, BDUs, gun on his hip, badge next to it, whatever, lanyard around his neck. And start talking to people, hey, how you doing, what's going on? And they walk down the hall and they get to the sheriff's or the chief's secretary. And they say, how's he doing? Oh, is he in? Oh, great, okay, is it okay if I talk to him? Great, okay, thanks. And they walk into the sheriff's or chief's office and they close the door. And I stop and I say, well, anybody worried? Anybody suspicious? Red flags? No hands raised. And I said, okay, now the door locks. You hear the door lock. Does that make you suspicious? A couple hands start creeping up and I tell them, well, now you're too fucking late. My plan was to walk into the office of a man that I knew and respected since I was a teenager. I was going to give him my speech, I was going to shoot him, and then I was going to shoot myself. And I get sick to my stomach thinking about how close I came to being that guy. Because I'm not that guy, and I never wanted to be that guy. And I'm so grateful that it never went beyond the thinking about it stage. Because he didn't deserve that. He doesn't deserve that. He's a good man, he's a good sheriff, he just dropped the ball on my case. Maybe others, but overall, he's very good at what he does, and he's a very good man. But I tell that story to illustrate to people, number one, how a guy who drank the Kool-Aid completely. I believed in our job, and I believed in our traditions, and I believed in the positive aspects of our culture. And I believed that we can make a difference and we can do good. And that all got dashed. And I wanted cops to understand that it can happen to any of us, anybody, and it doesn't take much. And there are lots of ways that we can stop it from happening, and we can stop people from getting anywhere near that point. But we have to pay attention. We have to know the baselines. We have to then take the steps to go, hey man, you're acting weird. What's going on? Let me help you. We can't just trust that somebody else is going to deal with it. So now I teach and I travel the state wherever people will let me come talk. I tried to make a living doing it, but people just don't want to pay for it. So I just do it as a volunteer. Like, hey, if you can cover my travel, I'll be there. Because I can't afford it, But so I go and I try to tell these stories and I try to talk to cops about mental illness and about PTSD and about being suicidal, and specifically suicide prevention. And I try to tell them my story, and here's where I dropped the ball. Here's where they dropped the ball. Here's where we could have done this differently. Here's where whatever. And I try to be as brutally honest as I can, both about my own shortcomings and the department's, because that's the only way we can really address this. And so, and it's a real it's a real hot and cold thing. Sometimes I feel like, God, we're making a lot of progress and I'm getting a lot of great response. This is so fantastic. And then everybody just goes silent on me. And the response I get from a lot of people is line level people, academy recruits, street level supervisors, they all recognize and acknowledge the need for this kind of training. The people that can actually make the decisions, though, don't want anything to do with it. And I don't know why. I have lots of theories, some reasonable, some not, but trying to get any of those guys to listen to me has been like banging my head against a wall.
It seems like that would be one of the most important trainings that you can provide, given, I mean, I saw online the other day that suicides among law enforcement, there's more officers that commit suicide than are killed in the line of duty.
I believe that. I absolutely believe that.
And that's not even counting the folks that are retired that you probably can never count.
Right, that nobody hears about.
Right.
You know, because I'll tell you what, if I kill myself, I'm not getting a full honors funeral. You know, I'm not going to get the flag draped casket and all that kind of stuff because I'm not a part of the family anymore. I'm not one of the guys. And
even if you were still on duty and you committed suicide, you still wouldn't.
It would be a shameful secret. We wouldn't use it as a learning opportunity. And I get so mad every time I hear about somebody committing suicide and listen to the responses from people. God, I wish he would have talked to me, and oh, I wish he would have said something. God, how selfish is he? Da 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 da. And I usually look at him and I go, how selfish is he? How selfish are you? Okay, what if he had brought it to you? What would you have said? What would you have done? How would you have helped this person? Oh, well, we could have talked about it, and we could have got him help, and we could have helped. And what if we had helped? And I go, okay, you're saying the word help a lot, but I don't think you understand what that means. I don't think you understand the actual cost of that help. Not financially, but time and energy and attention. You need to work with people over a long period of time. There's no simple answer. It's community, camaraderie, and trust. And all the research I've done and my understanding is that the easiest way to prevent these things from happening is to get there early. Well, we're not addressing it early. We're not addressing it until it's already a problem. No, it's too late. You can stall it, you can stop the bleeding, but you're not gonna heal the wound. So, you know, I've tried to talk to a couple of academy classes, and it's a rough transition to make from talking to, you know, street cops to academy recruits because they're very stiff, they're still very uncomfortable, they're learning, they don't really know, they're not in a place where they can express freely. And a lot of the academy classes don't want this training because it doesn't really fit with selling the job. It doesn't really fit with recruiting. It doesn't really fit with, you know, kind of this whole protect yourself on the street kind of mentality. And again, I think a lot of it comes back to, well, we have so many other things we need to teach. We don't have time for this. They don't put a priority on it, which really disappoints me.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like everything starts with your mental wellness.
Absolutely.
And everything trickles down from there. And if you're not feeling well, then I mean it's going to affect everything else.
How many times in training do we hear the phrase mental toughness? What is mental toughness? It's a buzzword. It's a buzzword for don't quit, don't be a bitch.
Yeah, survival. You're going to survive no matter what. Okay,
well, I'm trying to survive. Are you going to help me?
Yeah.
I'm begging you to help me survive. But you don't have the time for it. You're going to tell me like I'm weak. And it just, it bothers me, you know, and that's part of the reason I try to be as open as I can about it. Like, you know, I tell people all the time that my goal is to stare death in the face and make it blink. I want to shine a big bright light on this horrible, horrible thing. I want to normalize the conversation so that if you're working the street and you start having those thoughts, you can call up your buddy or your sergeant and go, hey, I'm safe, but here's what I'm dealing with right now. What can we do? And then your supervisor will say, all right, cool, let's get peer support in, or would you like to just talk to somebody else? Give me a name and we'll get them. Otherwise, I'll give you somebody. I'm here all the way. Let's get you off the street for the night. You're not in any trouble. There's no judgment. There's no, you know, we're just gonna help you get better so that you can get back out there and do the job.
Yeah, doesn't have to be any documentation. Doesn't have to be, you know, a 5150 hold, nothing like that. And, you know, and like you said, there's resources, there's chaplains if you're into that. I know we talked about, you know, identifying kind of where you have a baseline and identifying where there's something off with somebody else.
Sure.
How do you identify when something is off with yourself?
Very much in the same way I do with anybody else. So I try to pay attention to my feelings throughout the day. Where's my mental state at? Where's my emotional state at? Because those go hand in hand. And, you know, as we're talking, you know, I can notice as I talk about some of these things, I can feel my speech speed up. I can feel myself kind of gesturing more and moving around a little bit more. And a lot of it is little things like that. Or I recognize my sleep patterns. If I start having the nightmares, what kind of nightmares are they? But with, you know, on a day-to-day basis with normal people and with myself, it's things like, what am I eating and drinking? Am I eating and drinking regularly? Am I making healthy choices, or am I just going and grabbing fast food because I need something right now that's just going to give me that little feel good? Am I drinking too much? Am I smoking too much? How am I interacting with the people in my life? Am I short and punchy, or am I kind of calm and casual, you know? And there's really no uniform answer, right? Everybody has a little bit different baseline. They have different responses. And so you have to take a little bit of time to learn yourself and to learn the people around you. And kind of that way you can recognize, you know, as an example, and it's not mental health related, but it's one that I was like, I had a coworker on day shift one time who he would come in and you'd say good morning to him. And he was one of those salty, grizzled street vet kind of guys who I loved. Great dude. And he came in one day. He was normally the guy that would come in the morning and oh, good morning, man, how you doing? And he'd just grumble and go, what's so good about it?
Yeah.
And he'd slam his locker and he'd leave, right? One day he came in, good morning, man, how's it going? Oh, it's a great morning, feeling really good. And I kind of go, wait a minute.
Yeah.
And I told our beat partner, I go, something's up with him. And 3 hours later, he had a major heart attack.
Oh, wow.
Now, I'm not saying that my observation had anything to do with that, but I always think about that as a way that there was something off with him that day, whether he realized it or not. And it can be the same thing with mental health, where let's say you go into briefing, and whether it's me or somebody else that I'm observing, and normally I'm the jokester. You know, there's always one guy that has to make a wisecrack, and he's going to make everything goofy, and he's just going to piss everybody off or whatever, you know. But one day he comes in and he's real sullen, and he's real grouchy, or just real quiet. Okay, well, that's a red flag. It may not mean anything, but it's worth following up on. Or like we're talking about, a guy who usually comes in clear-headed, drinking his coffee, he's a CrossFitter, whatever, and he comes in one day unshaven, hungover, you know, red-eyed, keeping his head in his hand, the whole thing. Okay, well, what's going on? Why? How many times have you told a trainee, don't ever excuse what you see on the street if it looks suspicious? Same theory here. So for me, it's noticing those little deviations from the norm and then trying to assess them. Why is that the case? Okay, well, I'm going to come up with a couple explanations in my head, and then I'm going to try to prove or disprove them. And the easiest way to do it, and so many people are afraid to do it, but it's so easy once you get into the habit of, hey, I noticed you were acting different today. Here's what I noticed. Is everything okay? Oh, everything's fine. Okay, cool. Awesome, I'm glad to hear it. I just want to let you know, if you need to talk, or if you got something going on, I'm happy to listen. There's no judgment here, whatever. And having the ability to do that with the people in your life, whether it's coworkers, whether it's family members, whether it's friends, that's what saves lives. Because now you've opened up the door. And if it gets a little further and you are worried about somebody being a danger to themselves, you have to ask the question, hey man, forgive me for this, but are you thinking about hurting yourself? Are you planning to kill yourself? Nobody wants to say suicide. They don't want to say kill yourself. They want to say, hey, you're not thinking about doing it, right? You're not going to like... And I think there's this unspoken belief that if you say the words, you're going to put that idea in their head, or you're going to push them a little closer, which I don't agree with at all. I think saying the words and making it, laying the cards on the table, so to speak, especially for people like cops who make our living being direct and no BS. Laying the cards on the table shows respect, and it shows that you care in a way that we understand. And it doesn't just open the door, it kicks the door right off the hinges to letting that conversation happen. And even if that's not the time, in a month, if they're feeling that way, they may think about you saying that and go, oh, maybe they're right, maybe I should call him. And it's okay to call that guy or that girl,
Yeah.
And so that's, again, I tell people, I go, look for the signs of heavy drinking or stopping drinking. Look for somebody who's been in a really bad mood for a long period of time, suddenly being happy again, suddenly being happy-go-lucky, because In someone who's suicidal, that is potentially a sign that, well, they've made their decision, they've made their plan, and now they don't have to worry about anything anymore because in 3 days they're going to be dead. And I think a lot of it too, again, it comes down to that stigma blocking people from really addressing it normally. You know, they don't feel like they can, they don't know how, they don't feel like it's their place.
Yeah.
And I don't care if you're best friends with the guy or he's just some dude you've worked a couple calls with. It is absolutely your place to have that conversation with one of your coworkers.
Right.
If we're going to claim to have a law enforcement family, and if we're going to claim to care about each other and to be a team and to back each other up, if you trust a guy to back you up in a firefight, but you don't trust a guy to ask him a hard question, you're wrong. You clearly are screwed up. So it's so important to build that culture.
Yeah.
You know.
Does the same thing, I mean, I would imagine so, the same thing applies to the officer's family, their spouse,
Absolutely.
and their brothers or sisters or parents or whatever, is when you see the officer going through these changes or differences, then you need to address that as well. Yeah.
And you know, this is another thing, a part of building that community of, okay, well, you know that guy at work, but do you know his family life? Do you know his husband or, you know, wife's name? Do you know his kids? Do you know what's his deal? I don't know. You don't see a problem in that? You trust him with your life, but you don't know his spouse's name? That seems questionable to me. So, choir practice. Let's go back to choir practice. Choir practice could be a family picnic on your first weekend day. Hey, shift picnic this week at whatever park. Come on out if you can. Bring something to share. No booze allowed because it's going to be kids, but you know, we'll go out drinking, you know, for whoever wants to afterwards. And now you've got an environment where nobody's wearing their uniforms. You can, as much as you know, we're able to in a you know, kind of a paramilitary structure, you can put rank aside a little bit. Mm-hmm. You can talk to people as their first name, because again, we spend a lot of time calling each other our last names.
Yeah.
You know,
or Sarge.
Or
LT.
nicknames. Yeah. And when you start talking to a guy as I'm gonna throw Brad under the bus, as Brad instead of LT. Mm-hmm. Well, now he's a person, not just his collar brass, you know. And once you're a person, it's a lot easier to care. It's a lot easier to cross that line from professional into friendship. And so if we have, let's say you've got an established routine of doing these picnics, even just you do it once a month, where you get together as a shift and you do something together with your families, with your friends, whatever. And one day you notice that somebody comes into work and they're not acting right, but they won't talk to you, but you're really concerned. Well, now you can call their spouse, or you can grab somebody else on the shift and go, hey, have you noticed? Oh, I've noticed that too. What can we do about it? I've been trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So now we know we're reinforcing each other's observations. All right, let's call home. Let's see if there's anything going on there that we can help deal with. Because again, you're going to trust this guy with your life. You want him to be as healthy and clear-headed as possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the whole excuse people have for not talking about this stuff, is they don't want their partners questioning them.
Yeah.
Okay, why are we faking it? Why are we lying to each other?
Yeah.
Let's be honest and let's deal with it, because it's a lot easier if you deal with the problem while it's new than waiting until the scar is formed.
Yeah. And you can ask him or her, hey, how's Mary or whatever.
Yeah.
And they know that, you know, you're sincere about your questioning, so they might tell you, oh, you know what, we're going through some tough patches.
Things are rough,
you know?
man. Hey, you want to talk about it?
Yeah.
Nah, not right now. Okay, cool. Just let me know, man. I'll buy you lunch. We'll go shoot the breeze. It's all good. Like, no sweat, man. I'm here to help.
Yeah.
And it's not a patronizing thing. It's not an I feel sorry for you thing. It's a, hey, I care about you as a person. You know. And if any job requires that, it should be this. Mm-hmm. Because the stakes are so high. The stress and the risks are so high. We should be able to spend some time together blowing off steam responsibly, share the family life, share the rewards for the hard job we do, and really build a real connection, so that if somebody gets hurt, they're not just your coworker, they're your friend.
Yeah.
And you have a vested interest in helping them just because they're a person that you care about. And again, it's not difficult to implement these kind of things in a department, even just in one shift. Mm-hmm. You know, how many times you hear, oh, well, you're never going to change the whole world. Well, if I can help one person's world, then I'm doing something right.
Yeah.
Same thing goes with this. Start small. Yeah. And if one shift does it, and the rest of the shifts start hearing about, oh man, B team, they're really tight. Those guys really get along. They do stuff on the weekends. They're having a lot of fun. Like, I'm kind of jealous of that. I want to go to B team. Well, then they talk to a guy on B team, and he says, well, why don't you guys just do it on your shift? You guys can do it too. It's not hard.
Yeah.
Just pick a park, pick a day, have someone buy meat, and grill it up.
Yeah.
You're probably going to do it on the weekend anyway. Why not do it with people, you know? And once you establish the culture, and a small group starts it and then talks about it and shares it, it'll spread. The ripple effect. Except this one's positive.
Yeah.
You know.
Gosh, that seems like such an important thing to do, and it seems so easy to implement and to get started. That, you know, and cheap.
And cheap. It doesn't cost.
Financially.
Yeah. It's not like it's, you know, and this is something again that even the union could help out with, or the peer support
That's a good
team,
point. Yeah.
or maybe the department says, we really like this, and this is something that's good for the department. It's good for the community, so we're going to pitch in a little bit of money as well. And maybe it's just the command staff all throwing down $20 a month and pulling it up and going, hey, here's our donation. You know, we can't make it, but here you go, guys.
Yeah.
Good luck, and let us know, when the next one is.
Throw a barbecue in, you know, in the back lot or something like that.
Yeah.
Once a month or every other month.
Yeah, and this is something that I've offered this to so many departments and so many individuals of, if you don't know how to start it or you're questioning what to do, let me know. I will so happily come out and work with your people. I'll give you my time because I believe in this, and I'll help you put a plan together and implement it and build this camaraderie in this community together, because it's in the interest of everybody. And then if you do it right and you build that amongst yourselves, well, then you say, all right, things are going well, so every 2 months or once a quarter, we're going to host a community barbecue now. And then we're going to start building this relationship with our community as well. Well, now you're not just nameless, faceless, you know, authoritarian goons.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're Officer so-and-so, Officer Nick, you know, and now it's something where your community looks at you as people, not as invaders.
Yeah, yeah. And I see that sometimes with some of the agencies in Northern California anyway, that, you know, they do coffee with the cops, or they do, you know, they on Christmas time they go and they give gifts out and you know, Santa Claus and all this stuff.
And the only problem I have with those programs is that they're still really formal.
Okay.
You still have everybody in their uniforms.
Sure.
You still have everybody kind of being supervised by a member of command staff. It's still structured, and I look at it as, you know, give all the guys in the department a department T-shirt to wear, so that they can be identified as, oh, that's one of the cops. Mm-hmm. And go to a park, fire up the grill, and just let the community know, like, hey, come on out, we're buying the meat. Again, not that expensive.
Yeah.
A couple $100, you know, when everybody pitches in a little bit, or the union, or, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
And you could build a lot of goodwill in the community, and you can start breaking down some of these barriers that have been put up by both sides.
And just throw it up on Facebook or Twitter for the department, because people follow those.
People follow it, and they're looking for reasons to harp on people, and looking for reasons to criticize. Let's give them something to praise as well.
Yeah.
You know, and with the best of intentions, I see a lot of departments jumping on these social media challenges, the lip sync challenge, or the,
seen those.
You know, I appreciate the spirit of it, but they always feel really forced and really hokey, which can be a good thing. But I think that time and that effort would be so much better spent sitting down with the community in an informal environment and just hanging out. We're not here to talk about all the issues yet. We want to know about that, but first we just want to know who you guys are.
Yeah.
So you invite the prominent community members, you invite the schools and the churches and the clubs and the sports teams. Come on out, guys, please bring something to share, because we can't afford to feed everybody as much as we'd like to. Mm-hmm. And let's do a community situation. And now that's the actual definition of community policing that we hear so much of our command staff preach about, but they don't actually know what it is, you know? Or if they do, they have a really, again, formal, structured view of what it is, as opposed to, well, we're not robots, we're people.
Yeah.
Let's act like it.
Yeah. It's whatever today's program is. In a couple of years it'll be different, but this is what we're doing
We're
today.
scheduled for this now because this is what's in all the leadership magazines and the leadership training. So this is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Get a little creative, guys. Step outside of the box. And, you know, I tell people all the time, I say, well, listen, if you've got a group of people that you want to make friends with, what do? You eat with them. For the entire history of humankind, breaking bread has been a sign of friendship and welcome and camaraderie. How many times have you sat down with a member of the public and just had a meal? I very rarely did it. Almost never.
Yeah.
I mean, the occasional homeless guy that wanted half of my sandwich, all right, fine.
You sit down and have a meal with them.
You know, but if we do this with community members on the regular basis, they're going to feel a lot more comfortable approaching us and saying, hey, there's this problem in my community, or hey, I interacted with this officer the other day and it was really bad. And they're going to feel comfortable coming to you and saying this because now they know that you're not just some guy that's hiding behind the thin blue line as they know it.
Sure.
You're just a normal dude wearing a uniform. And you care about them because you've spent time talking to them.
Yeah.
You know their kids, you know their families, you know their story.
And you've got your own story, and you're going through your own problems and your own issues as well.
Exactly. Your community is going to care a lot more about you if they know you as a person. You hear all the time about how people kind of criticize that cops don't live in their communities. And there's a lot of good reasons for that. Really good reasons for that. But there's also a good reason to be there.
And some do, yeah.
And some do. And you don't have to live there to be a part of the community. You do have to spend time there, though.
Yeah.
And not just while you're pushing your squad car.
Yeah.
That's my belief.
No, yeah, I have a vested interest in the community you're trying to protect and police and keep those folks safe.
Yeah, and if you integrate into the community, and you know, and you see it all over Facebook. These guys, oh God, I can't remember the guy's name. Bald white cop working in a very poor black neighborhood in Georgia or somewhere in the South. Who he married into the neighborhood. He spends time in the neighborhood. He brings snacks for the kids. He brings drinks for the kids. He hangs out and he braids the little girl's hair and he plays basketball with them and he does all this stuff. And he gets universal praise for the way he interacts because he became a part of the community. He put the time and he put the effort and he was genuine about it. And it makes all the difference.
Yeah.
Because now all of these kids see him as a person who is a cop, not a cop who's there to arrest their parents, kick down their door, harass them or whatever else, you know, the perception is.
Yeah.
And I just keep hammering it because in my eyes, it's so obvious that it's not a difficult or expensive thing to implement. Departments spend so much time and so much money trying to come up with ways to integrate into the community and build community relations. And I go,
got this new program that we're going to implement. And
give me 2 hours and $200 and I'll plan something up for you and we'll get this thing started. And y'all just have to keep the ball rolling. Mm-hmm. It's easy.
Well, we did an episode with Sean and Neil. Mm-hmm. They work in the Central Valley.
Right.
And they go out and they run. And they run with elementary school children.
I love it.
And that's completely free. Mm-hmm. It's giving your time to the community and
sending a good message with fitness.
Yeah, exactly. Fitness, and you're building a relationship with kids, and they see you as a normal person too.
Yeah.
So it's
I love that.
It doesn't take a grant from the state to go implement something that's going to help the community build a relationship. Right.
And again, and I think I'm very fortunate with all the bad things I've gone through and how distant I got from the law enforcement community, and now in the last couple of years I've been trying to come back in and serve however I can and help my friends and my brothers and sisters that are doing this job. I have a really cool perspective now because I have a little bit easier time seeing both sides and seeing where both sides are totally missing the middle ground and what simple solutions are there, like we're talking about, running, barbecue. One of the things I used to recommend to guys is I go, hey, it's hot out, right? Who runs the ice cream truck in your neighborhood? Call them up, tell them to meet you at a park. And then tell all the neighborhood kids you can find and their friends and their family, hey, come on out. We're buying ice cream for the next 20 minutes. Line up, let's get everybody some ice cream. It's ice cream. It doesn't cost you much. And the goodwill you're gonna generate by standing there and handing out ice cream to kids and to their parents and to their friends and to the gangbanger down the block. Now you're treating people like human beings.
Yeah.
And now they're looking at you going, wait a minute, I don't want to punch that guy, he gave me ice cream. I've never punched anybody gave me ice cream.
Yeah.
So, and the offer stands again. Anybody that's watching, that's listening, I'm happy to help. Let me know, because I believe in it. I believe this will help, and I think if we can start spreading this message and getting it out there to people, we can make a big, big difference in the national conversation that's going on. And we can start really putting out some legitimate good press that's beyond, oh, he's just doing his job. Because buying ice cream for kids or hosting a barbecue on your off day, that's not part of your job, but it should be.
Yeah. It
should be a part of the MO.
No, it absolutely should be. And for the guys and gals the officers that think, I'm not going to, how does that benefit me? What's that going to do for me? I mean, obviously, doing this for your community benefits you tremendously, but if you're the guy or the gal that's out there that they know, and let's say they get, not to say that you're doing this for this reason, but if there's ever a situation where you need information to solve a crime, solve a murder, they'd be more willing to talk to you.
Right.
because they feel like they know you.
Exactly. You know, look back to these guys I had in the jail who, you know, were badass gangsters who became informants for me, or just people I was friendly with. And when I got out to the street, they were willing to come up and offer me information because they knew I was going to be respectful to them. They knew I treated them fairly, and they knew I talked to them like people. It takes nothing. It costs nothing. And it's really easy to flip the switch to being stern, no-nonsense authority figure again if you need to.
Mm-hmm.
And the benefit of, you know, again, look at your use of force. If you're going to go interact with somebody and you have to use force, you're not going to start with the highest level of force. You're going to start as low as you possibly can, because as we're all told in training, once you get up here, it's really hard to get back down. Verbally and you know, all of your interactions should be exactly the same way. Why would you start off being a hard ass? Why wouldn't you start off being the nice guy? There's no reason not to, and there are so many guys that don't view it that way because they've been trained differently or because whatever, you know. And I'll tell them, I say, listen, the benefit to you is it's going to make your job easier. All of your investigations are going to be easier if the community knows you and respects you and they like you. It's going to make you safer, because let's say you get into a scrap with somebody on the street. Instead of standing around and filming it for YouTube or World Star, they're going to come in and help you. And they're going to pull the guy off of you, or they're going to do whatever. They're going to help you pin him down until cover gets there.
Or if they know something's about to happen to you, they may, which has happened in the past.
Right. I had a guy in the jail who was related to a well-known Bay Area rapper. And he and I, we had a really interesting relationship of kind of mutual shit talking, you know, based out of respect, you know, the typical guy stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
And, you know, I gave him a pass on some minor stuff because I knew, I was like, dude, you're not a bad dude, you're just kind of a screw up. You're just kind of a goofy screw up, you know, the lovable goof. Well, he and I had a, you know, several month, you know, rapport that had gone on. And one night I was going in to do my 1:30 a.m. count, and it's pitch black, and I'm going to go into a barracks with 120 inmates by myself with no cameras. I've got my flashlight, my radio, and a set of cuffs.
And you're unarmed.
And I'm unarmed, yeah. So if anything happens, nobody's going to know unless I can key up that radio or unless they hear me screaming from outside. Well, as I'm walking up to the door, a dude pokes his head out, this particular guy, and he goes, hey, don't come in here alone. And I go, what? And he goes, can I go to medical? So I go, yeah, go to medical. And he goes, don't go in, don't go in. Okay, well now my spidey sense is tingling. So I go back to my control room and I let my guy know, and I said, hey, I'll be right back, just hold everybody where they're at. So I go down to medical and I talk to this guy, and he goes, hey, there's 5 dudes that are pissed off, they're gonna jump you by the bathroom. And of course I go, I'm sorry, can you say that again? He said, yeah, they're gonna jump you, dude. And I go, why are you telling me this? And he goes, because you're good to me, you respect me. And I respect you. And he goes, I'm not gonna let you get jumped over some bullshit. Wow. I go, well, thanks, man, I appreciate it. I go, do you feel safe going back in there? And he goes, not really. I go, all right, sit tight, we'll take care of that. I'll get the sergeant down here and we'll deal with it. So we dealt with it all, and I ended up going in with, you know, with the team on reserve, and as soon as the guys came out to get me, we threw the lights on and we snatched them all up, and we were able to deal with it. And I didn't get beat up. And it was only because I was nice to the guy.
Yeah.
I didn't give him any special favors. I didn't cross any moral lines. I didn't treat him like my best friend in the whole wide world, but I treated him like a human being, and I gave him basic respect. Yeah. Which so many guys don't. And that kind of thing will happen on the street as well. It doesn't take much. Yeah. It doesn't take much. And I can't fathom why it's not wider practice right now.
And this is something that's generally or usually passed on by, you know,
those experienced guys like you're talking about.
Right.
It's the guys that we're losing, or the guys that are just not comfortable sharing this stuff. Of, you know, you learn these things the hard way. Yeah. Well, if somebody's already gone through all the hard stuff to learn it, why would I want to do that again? I'll make my own mistakes, thank you very much. You know, and that's where we need our veteran guys to talk more. We need guys to work really hard to avoid being jaded, and avoid being bitter, and avoid being that crotchy, salty, you know, kind of jerk cop that we all know. We all know that guy. How
do you help them along when their attitude is like, oh, you know, these newer guys, they don't know what they're doing. They don't want to, you know, they don't want to work. They feel entitled already. They come here and they, you know, they feel like they've been here for 20 years already. How do you get them to, the older guys anyway, the senior guys, to?
There's 2 ways I see for that. The first one is to tell them, how does ostracizing them help that? And the second one is, what right do you have to bitch about it if you're not trying to fix it? Make it better or shut up. And if you're not helping, you're hurting. If you're not helping the situation, then you're going to make it worse. So if you have a problem with the way guys are acting, figure out where it's coming from and what you can contribute to make it better. And again, it goes back to that community, where if you have a community of support and of conversation and of mutual training, those guys are going to stand out like a sore thumb because they're going to be the exception, not the rule. We have to foster an attitude of, if you have something to share, share it. Because every one of us wearing a badge has a different experience. We have different strengths, we have different weaknesses, we have different successes and failures. And if we're not sharing them, nobody's going to learn from them.
Yeah.
So if you're willing to share all of your war stories and you're willing to tell everybody how great you are, you damn well better be willing to help a guy learn how to be as great as you. Because if you're as good as you say you are and you're not helping, well, dude, you don't belong here. So for me, it's education. It's showing them why that's a problem. Would you rather work with a guy who keeps everything to himself or a guy that shares his knowledge? That's easy.
Yeah.
Would you rather work with a dude who's an entitled, know-it-all prick, or a dude who is a sponge ready to learn? Okay, well, encourage the behavior that you want to see.
Yeah.
So if a guy comes in bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, drinking all the Kool-Aid, ready to be super cop, don't tell him, knock it off.
Yeah.
Don't slap him back down. Say, all right, dude, first things first, we're going to have to temper your expectations. Second thing second, come with me, let me teach you some stuff. Like this dude Skip, who used to sit my punk ass down as a 20-year-old rookie who just wanted to be a super cop, and he would sit me down and he would give me a real dose of street knowledge. Mm-hmm. Here's this code, here's that code, here's how it applies, here's this technique. And one of the best lessons I learned from him was one night, he was our transportation guy, which, he would come out to wherever we were and he'd pick up our arrestees and he'd take them down to jail for us, take our booking packet, do the whole thing. This was before computerized booking packets. We were doing all the paper shit still, which is really neat because now I feel like one of the salty old guys. But we had a guy one night who was running his mouth. We had a short pursuit or something. He was just one of those guys that pissed everybody off. And so I had him in cuffs and I was searching him and we had to take his shoelaces off to send him to jail. And they were all knotted up, so I'm just cutting them off. So I pull out my knife and I go to cut his shoelaces off, and just as I'm doing it, he kicks his foot and I cut my thumb. Real bad. So I'm bleeding all over the place, and I'm pissed. And so I stood up and I put my forearm on his shoulder and I just put him into the van. Did one of those. Wrong. As any good sergeant would have told me. Well, there wasn't a sergeant around to see it. My training officer didn't see it. Skip saw it. He immediately handed that arrestee off to somebody else and took me around the side of the van and he set me straight. And he let me know why that was wrong. And he put the fear of God into me. And he goes, if I ever see you doing that shit again, I will kick your ass myself. You do not do that because you're going to make life harder for every single person here if you cross those lines and you start acting like one of these dirtbags. Yeah. He said, you need to be better than that. You need to treat these people with respect. The cuffs are on. You win. Act like it. Whoa. And he said, I'll see you in the locker room after shift. Okay, so I get back and he saw me in the locker room and he gave me another come to Jesus talk. Yeah. And it stuck with me forever. And every time I came close to losing my temper, I heard his voice in my mind again. Well, what if Skip had just said, F him, let him learn by himself?
That's a slippery slope that's, yeah.
It's really easy to start doing some really bad stuff if you follow that path. And he cut me off immediately. And he let me know I was not Billy Badass. I was not anything special. I was no different than that guy apart from a couple choices I had made in my life. And I thank God for it every single day. If I ever saw him again right now, I'd hug him real good and he'd hate every bit of it. He'd probably beat me down for it, but I'd do it. Because I'm grateful for it. He made me a better, not just a better cop, he made me a better man with that talk. Yeah. And that's what our veterans and our salty old guys need to be doing. Is they need to be sharing that knowledge. They need to be encouraging the right behaviors and the right mindsets. And obviously, they need to be learning too. Because as soon as they stop learning, they're useless. Because this is a career that evolves so fast. So that's, my thing is education, understanding, and just share what you got. Yeah. We're all in it together. All of us affect each other. whether it's on your shift, in your department, in your county, in your state. We all affect each other. I mean, look at how many nationally known cases have affected the entire profession in the last 10 years. If you think one cop's actions don't make a difference, go ask Johannes Meserly. Go ask Darren Brown up there in Ferguson. Go ask any of these guys that have made the news for controversial shootings or controversial situations, and ask them if one person's behavior affects us all.
Yeah.
It goes both ways, though.
Yeah.
Positive can affect us all, too.
Yeah, that's a great point, because, you know, if you think what you're doing is not going to affect anyone else, and it's just you by yourself, well, guess what? You've got the whole world on your shirt with that camera, and the moment you do something wrong, it's going to go viral. Everyone's going to see what you just did.
Exactly.
So you constantly have an audience with you.
Right, and not only are you going to be judged for it, but all of your partners are going to be judged for it, and every cop in the country is going to be judged for your behavior.
And your family.
And
you
your
represent
family.
your family.
How many cops' families have had to move because of death threats or whatever, because of actions they've made on duty? Whether they're the right action that was spun the wrong way or the wrong action that was made public. It doesn't matter, the effect is the same. So that's where the veteran guys need to use all of that experience, all of that knowledge, all of that skill, and they need to put it to good use.
Yeah. And for the younger folks, just be open-minded.
Shut up and listen.
Don't just think, oh, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. He's been here for 20 years. He or she has been through it, and learned from their mistakes. And
even if they're trying to share something that's not the right way to do things, learn from that. Learn the wrong way. Because if you can look at that and go, that's not right, I know that's not right, then you can go to your training officer or another veteran on the shift and you go, hey man, I had a conversation with somebody and they were kind of telling me to do this and it doesn't feel right to me. What do you think? Okay, well now you're learning.
Yeah.
And again, this is a job that is different every single call, every single day. You know, there's no such thing as routine. You need to keep learning. You need to question the things that are being told to you and put it, you know, critical thinking. Think critically and figure out how to implement that stuff in the best way possible to serve your department, your partners, and your community.
Yeah, yeah. I've heard someone say once that they were a sergeant. They go, well, you know, I learned everything about being a sergeant from all the bad sergeants I had.
Yeah.
When I looked up to them, I'm never going to do that.
Yeah.
So here I am doing what I do. So. And
that's it. I mean, that's such a great lesson of, you know, if you can't learn the right way, learn the wrong way, and don't make those mistakes.
Yeah.
And if we're all in together, and if we're all really working towards these good behaviors, these good mentalities, these good relationships, that ripple is going to spread so fast, and it's going to have such an incredible impact on our day-to-day jobs, on our reputation, and on our communities. There's no reason cops can't be respected and beloved again. Like, you know, we're not right now. And a lot of times it's because we're not doing a good job of selling the good things that we're doing. We're not doing a good job of showing why the bad apples are the bad apples and why they're the exception, not the rule. And it's not going to take much to fix it, but it is going to take a unified effort.
Yeah.
You know, even if it's one shift at a time, we can do it.
Yeah. So you talked about you go to the academy or when they'll have you at the academies to talk, and what other kind of programs or things are you getting involved with? So
a lot of my stuff is, I think the official language they use is they call it officer survival, or mental health training, suicide prevention, all those different things. So my talks are primarily based around, here's my story and here's what you can learn from it. And then I spend a lot of time on peer support and suicide prevention. So peer support being this community building. And here are concrete steps you can take as a peer to protect and assist your coworkers. You know, things like understanding the benefits that are available to you and the steps you have to take to claim them if you're injured. If you don't know how to do that, you can never help anybody else. And I'm shocked at how many peer support people I know that I ask them, I go, hey, if you got hurt on duty tomorrow, do you know who to call to understand your benefits? Do you know who your HR representative is? No. Okay, well, what good are you to somebody else that just got hurt? Do you understand the workers' comp system and what your rights are and all that? No. What good are you then? If you know, so with the academy people, I usually will tell them, all of the good things you hear about this job can be true, but so can all of the bad ones. And so I try to give them a realistic look at what happens when the bad things happen. And I try to explain to them that if they start taking care of themselves mentally and emotionally from day one, their odds of avoiding ending up like me or so many other guys that get sick, get injured, wash out due to bad behavior or impulse control issues or whatever. If you deal with those things early on and you set up a healthy program, in the same way you set up a fitness program, you can have a long, healthy, happy career and retire for a long, happy, healthy retirement.
Yeah.
As opposed to how many guys we hear about that die 5 years after they retire, or retire for 2 years and then come back.
Yeah, or they medical out, or in California anyway, the retirement now is what they retired at 57 now. Or
I think
like
so.
that.
Yeah, 57 at 2% or something.
It's gone from from 50 to 57.
Right,
So.
and it's so I tell them, start working on your mental and emotional health now. Start building a support system, whether it's family and friends, whether it's coworkers, whether it's your academy classmates. I mean, I still have 5 guys from my academy class that I talk to on a daily basis. Now, I'm the only one that's not a cop anymore. One guy went federal, so I guess he's not really a cop. But, and it's a lot of the ball busting and trash talking that happens in most kind of guy groups. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, there's also a lot of mutual respect. There's a lot of assistance when things get bad. There's a lot of commiseration and comfort there.
And each other cares.
Right. We know there's some genuine care there. We know, and we know each other's baselines. Yeah. We know each other's standard behavior. We know the things that we're going through in our personal lives. We know the struggles that this guy's having with his kid, or this guy's having at work, or this guy's having when he's trying to go through school and deal with family, or whatever. Or there's an illness that they're dealing with. We know all of these things, so we can check in. And a lot of times the real personal stuff happens on a one-on-one basis outside of the actual group. So we're still kind of protecting the sanctity of our trash talk, so to speak.
Yeah.
But the love and the support is there. Well, I don't think any of those guys will ever call it love, because they look at me as the hippie guy with that. But
you're probably just stoned anyways.
That's not get a lot of that. Oh, great, the stoners talking rainbows again. But that's it exactly. Is we have a group that I know that if I'm having a really bad day, I can go to those guys and say, dudes, I'm JFU. I'm just fucked up today. I just need to vent. And they'll go, okay, we'll do it here, or call one of us. Don't whine about it, do it. Great, thanks. So now you go. And maybe 4 out of 5 will give great advice and one guy will have some snarky, goofy comment, but it's good because that makes it normal.
Yeah.
That makes it just like every other topic we talk about if they talk a little trash back. Mm-hmm. Because again, I know it comes from a place of respect.
Yeah.
And so I tell these guys, build your support system as early as you can. Maintain that support system and build the expectation that you're going to talk about these things, and that you want their feedback, and that it's okay to ask you if you're okay, and ask you how your day was, and ask you if you've had any difficult calls lately. And then the suicide prevention stuff is obviously very, very personal to me. I have a tattoo on the inside of my wrist that says "Not Today," with a sunrise above it. And I've got my little semicolon up there. And so for me, what that tattoo is, and I bring it up in all of my classes, and that is my absolute last ditch stop get effort, because it's on my gun hand. So every time I've ever held a gun with that thought in my mind, I've stared at that hand, that wrist, for a long time. And so I put that on there as a reminder that today's not the day to do it. And the technique that I teach, I don't know if I'm the first one to come up with it, but I'm the first one I've heard come up with it, so I'm going to claim it. I call it the sunrise theory. And I teach it to everybody that'll listen to it, whether they're a cop or a firefighter, or military, doctor, anybody. Some guy on the street, like, oh, you want to hear about my sunrise theory? Cool, let me tell you all about it. And what the sunrise theory is a suicide prevention measure that is absolutely idiot-proof. It is so simple that whether you're drunk or high or tired or angry or whatever, you can remember it. And it's as simple as this. No matter how bad you feel right now, no matter how bad your moment is, no matter how strong the urge is to eat a gun, take those pills, drive off a bridge, whatever, if you can hold on for one more sunrise, you win. You win. Because as most people know who work in a public service capacity or a mental health capacity, it's the nighttime hours that are the most dangerous. As soon as the sun goes down and the world goes to sleep and everything's dark and quiet, that's when the demons come out. And so for me, I spent a lot of nights thinking, I'm never going to see another sunrise. This is it. And you know, my dog is kind of what saved me more often than not, because he would come and put his head on my leg, and I'd look at him and I'd go, I can't leave you. This is as close as I'm ever going to get to a kid, you know. So I'd put the gun away and I'd call somebody and I'd talk about it, and I'd hand the guns off to somebody and, you know, get them locked up, and then I'd call my shrink and we'd deal with it. And then once I was stable again and my shrink agreed, and it was all documented in that, because I really want to preserve my rights, and I want to make sure I'm safe and methodical about these things. And then I would collect my guns again and I would go back to normal life, and that would be kind of the process. So I would think I'm never going to see another sunrise again. And then I'd say, well, how long until sunrise? And I'd pull out my phone and I'd look, and sunrise is at, you know, 5:46 in the morning. Okay, well, it's 1:30 right now, so okay, well, I can make it that far. I can hold on for there. And I would figure out whatever I had to do to get through those hours until the sun came up again. And then I would go outside. Usually I walk the dog, but sometimes I would just go out and stand in the street or sit in the backyard, and I would wait till the sun rose, and I would stand there, and I would turn off all of my other, you know, my phone would go away, no music, I wouldn't talk to anybody. All of my distraction would go away, and I would spend 5 or 10 minutes just watching the sunrise. And now there's a process that I've developed that I go through, and this is what I teach, is I tell people, make it to sunrise, get somewhere comfortable, whether you're standing or sitting or laying or whatever, watch the sunrise and pay attention to how you feel physically as the sun comes up and the world gets brighter and the warmth hits you. Pay attention to how you feel mentally and emotionally. And I bet, I'm willing to bet almost anything on it, I bet you'll feel at least a little bit better if you do that. At least a little bit, to where you think, maybe I can go one more day. And I've never had anybody that I've counseled tell me after watching a sunrise that they can't make it through another day. There's a plan in place. If they do, obviously, then we're going to get, you know, professionals involved and really get them some help. But if I can talk you through one more sunrise, I'll then tell you, cool, do you think you can make it through today? Yeah, I think I can. Awesome. Call me if you need me. Otherwise, call me tonight and we'll do the whole thing again if we have to. Sometimes I have to go 5 or 6 days with somebody of doing this, where we talk for a couple hours in those early hours, and then we wait till sunrise. I tell them to put the phone down, do sunrise, and then talk to me again. And of course, while they're doing their sunrise thing, I'm doing mine, because that's my medicine still. And there is, but I've never had to go more than 6 days with somebody. Usually, and that's only been a handful of times, and they go, all right, I can do this. So call me back when you need me. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. There is something so magical about that sunrise, and I can't explain it. Science, religion, you know, whatever it is you want to call it, there's something there that makes you feel stronger, makes you feel a little bit better. And once the world is brighter, it's easier to deal with these demons. So I teach this to people, and I tell them, I said, this doesn't just work for you. This doesn't just work for your friends and family. This works for anybody you're talking to on the street. And I remember I was teaching a CIT class, and I had, in every cop class you go to, there's a group of guys in the back. Mm-hmm. Usually the salty guys. They're the I don't give a fuck guys. Mm-hmm. And they kind of sit in the back and they cross their arms and they kind of scoff at you.
We're getting out early today?
Yeah, exactly. When's lunch? You know, it's bogus. Those dudes are always the ones I watch the most. And I had one guy who I knew from the minute we started the class, he was that guy for me. He was the only one in the class that day. And I didn't get through to him while I was talking. I never got a response from him that made me feel like I really, the message sunk in or whatever. Okay, you can't get everybody. I knew I got other people. And about 4 days later, I get a text message from him. Because in every class I do, I give him my personal cell phone number and my email. And I go, I'm a resource available to you guys. I am committed to serving the cops that I respect and that I used to work with. I'm committed to making this, the community and the status quo better, and making sure people don't have to go through what I did. So I'm here, I'm available to you. Whether it's for you, your friends, your family, your partners, or somebody on the street, you call me, I'm available. And this guy texted me. And he said, hey, my name is so-and-so, I was in your class the other day. I was the guy sitting in the back scoffing at everything you said. I'm like, I remember you, buddy. And he said, listen, I just thought I had to share with you that I was going in to watch today. I was 10 minutes late to get back to the barn. And as I was crossing a local bridge, I saw a guy bleeding from the arms climbing over the rail. And any cop that's been around for a while, who's ending a long shift, who sees something like that, no matter how caring you are, your first thought is, oh shit.
Yeah.
So he did the right thing and he pulled over and he called it in and he got out to try and deal with the guy. And he said as he was walking up to the guy to speak with him, he remembered one sentence. Can you make it till sunrise? He said, I didn't remember anything else you said, but that came to my mind. I heard you say that to me. So he walked up to the guy and he introduced himself and he said, hey, I understand you're having a really bad day. I'm here to help. And he said, I just want to talk to you. And he goes, I'm not gonna give you a bunch of crap. He said, but do you think you can hold on for one more day? Do you think you can hold on until sunrise? And the guy kind of looked at him and he said, yeah, I think I can. He goes, awesome. Why don't you climb over the rail and I'll get you some help and we'll see if we can make it worth that. So the guy climbed back over. He said he had him climb back over and on the way to get help within 5 to 10 minutes. And he said, so I didn't believe a word of what you said until I had to use it. And he said, and now I'm a believer.
Wow.
And that was one of the most rewarding texts I've gotten since I started doing this, of like, this dude who absolutely discounted it all because it was hippy dippy hug a thug bullshit. He took it, one piece sunk in, one sentence, and it worked. Now that's not a credit to me, that's a credit to him, doing the job, doing it well, and using the resources available to him. But that reinforced my belief in this technique, in this theory of all you have to do is hold on for one more sunrise. You don't have to hold on for 10 more years. You don't have to hold on indefinitely. Make it one more day. And I've spent the last 8 years living one day at a time. And so it saved my life. It's saved plenty of lives for people I've worked with. And you know, obviously the ripple effect from there, I think it's so valuable, and I think it should be standard training for anybody that may encounter people with mental health issues. So that's one of the primary things that I try to hammer with academy recruits or advanced officer training or peer support members or whoever else will listen to me stand on my soapbox, you know.
It's amazing that it's an amazing story, and it's amazing the way that you can deal with it, so how you can put it so easily, and again, I'm just taken back and surprised by the lack of acknowledgement, I guess, of keeping your officers, you know, keeping them healthy mentally.
Yeah, I agree, and I feel the same way. I'm kind of baffled by it. I can't come up with a real logical explanation for why aren't we dealing with this, because it's not difficult, it's not expensive, it's not time consuming, and it is immensely valuable in every facet of our job. You see departments spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to put gyms in and buy fitness memberships or do training or whatever to deal with physical fitness. Where's the mental fitness? Where's the emotional fitness? It's all the same thing. And just speaking for guys on patrol, one of the analogies I use all the time is I said, listen, if you had a partner come into work with a broken leg and try to walk it off and hide it and just do the job, would you let them get in a car and go out there? No, because now he's a liability to you and everybody else he's going to encounter. Why is a mental injury any different? Shouldn't be. The results are the same if they're not able to do the job properly and safely. So it's in everybody's interest to recognize the signs of that, the limp, the pain, the slow sitting down, you know, the same with the mental stuff. It's in everybody's interest to recognize these things and then address them. You don't have to be disrespectful to go, hey man, is something wrong? I'm here to help. And it just makes it easier when the community fosters that.
Yeah.
So, and again, you know, I'm baffled that I'm offering this training for free. You let me sit in front of your decision makers for 1 hour and I'll sell you on it. No question. Because, and that's no tribute to me, that's a tribute to the system, to the theory, to the work that I've picked up from a lot of smarter people than me and through my own trial and error. But the resistance is so strong, and I don't know if there's a liability thing. I don't know if it's underselling the problem. I don't know if it's just, well, we got more important things to worry about. But I am dead set and determined to make something like this regular training for every cop in America.
Yeah.
because it's useful in every department, in every position, in every department. And obviously the same goes for fire. Same goes
Sure.
for medical. Same
Sure.
goes for military. We can avoid a lot of problems and save a lot of money, and more importantly, save a lot of lives if we put a little bit extra work into this and approach it from a different angle. And that's, that's this kind of mantra that I keep repeating to myself is it's worth it. Keep going and you'll get there.
Yeah.
Because I spend a lot of time getting demoralized about it. Like, I don't even know why I waste my time. People aren't listening. Keep going, because every once in a while I get a text message like I did from that guy, or I get a Christmas card from somebody who I worked with 4 years ago, and they send me a picture of their family happy and healthy, and they just got a promotion, and they tell me all about how well they're doing, and I go, okay, well, that's worth every bad day I've got doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What would you say to somebody who may be watching and thinking, maybe I'm starting to kind of fall down that path or that rabbit hole where I'm not as happy as I used to be.
Mm-hmm.
The job's kind of getting to me, the calls, or maybe they experienced something that was really critical or really troubling to them, and they're not sure what to do next, what the next step is, or if it's just, is it just a bad day, or am I actually needing some help or something?
The first thing I would say is congratulations for recognizing it and acknowledging it. That is a bold step, and it takes a lot of guts to do that. The second thing I would say is either call me or call your peer support team. If you don't have a peer support team, call me and we'll start one. You need to talk about it. Don't hide it. Find somebody you trust, whether it's on your department or in your personal life, and start talking about those feelings. Start paying attention to whatever habits you're using to cope with it. Are you drinking too much? Are you eating crappy food? Are you not sleeping? Are you exercising? All of these little things that are so difficult to do when you're falling down that hole. All of those things have a major effect on fighting it. So the first step, the only thing you really need to do if you start having those thoughts is start talking about it. Have the discussion. Let somebody you trust know. And I'm happy to be somebody you trust. If you don't trust anybody in your department, that's a whole different set of problems. Start with me. And I'll give you my email, put it in the description or something.
We'll put all your
deal with all that
contact
so that people can find it, because a lot of people don't recognize it until it's far too late. And then they're so deep in it, or they've already made the mistake that's going to cost them their career or their freedom or somebody else their life. And now you can't go back. Well, if you catch it early and you have the luxury of questioning, well, is it just a bad day? That's the perfect time to start dealing with it. Because if you still have that question, then you're not too far. And we can probably bring you right back to your normal self without a lot of effort. And then we just establish a simple maintenance plan, which is the same stuff anybody else is going to tell you. Eat the best food you can, work out regularly, get some good sleep, and talk more. There's no shame in it. There's no shame in it, especially doing the job we do. I can't wrap my head around people that would shame you for it. And the response I get from that a lot is people go, well, how do I respond to people that give me shit for it? Well, you look them in the face and you say, thank God you don't understand. I really hope you never do. That's a fantastic thing that you don't have any frame of reference for what this stuff is like. That means you're healthy. Or healthier than me. Good. So, talk about it. It's okay to feel those things. And it's really something to be proud of, to recognize it, acknowledge it, and take action to stop it.
Well, yeah, we'll put all your contact info in the box. And
I just want to help. I want to be useful. And if I can take all of the bad crap that I've gone through, and more importantly, the mistakes I've made, and if I can hand all of that experience and knowledge off to somebody else to run with and to build something really good off of, and take care of the men and women I still think of as my people. I'm not one of the guys anymore in the way that I used to be. I don't get the wave when I pass them on the street. If I have to call, I don't get treated like one of the guys anymore, but I'm still one of the guys,
Yeah.
Cops are my people, and I hate seeing what has happened to the public reputation of law enforcement. And I especially hate it because the solutions are relatively simple. At least part of the solution.
Sure.
I won't claim to be able to fix all of it, but part of the solution is relatively simple.
Yeah.
Mental and emotional health and communication. So if I can be of service to any department, any individual cop, any supervisor, any peer support team, and I think most importantly of all, any administrator who's willing to give me the time of day and let me share my message, then I'm doing something worthwhile with my time. And that's just nothing but a good thing.
You got an amazing story.
Thank you.
I'll ask you one last thing.
Sure.
What are your plans now for the future?
Well, I helped another cop buddy of mine start a private investigation firm, so I'm working for him while I build up my hours to get my license. So that's nice because I can still feel like I'm using some of those skills. But primarily, I want to get some more tattoos, and I want to hang out with my dog, and I want to enjoy every single day that I've got.
Yeah.
Right now, I've got a pretty good handle on the suicidal thoughts and the PTSD, and my mental health is in a pretty good spot, so I'm trying to get my physical health back in order, drop a couple extra pounds. Weird how that happens. And I'm just trying to make every day a good one, and if I don't get another sunrise, I want to make sure that when I go, all of my people know how I feel about them, and all of my people know that I'm at peace with it. When I go, I'm good because I've done everything I can do, and I've tried to be a good person, and damn it, I've had a good life. I'm a happy dude, man, and I'm very, very fortunate. So my plans are just to try and make the best of what I got.
There you go. Well, Nick, I really appreciate sitting down with you. And
thank you.
You got, like I said, you got an amazing story, and I'm sure, it's just great. So
this has been
fantastic. It's great what you do.
I appreciate you having me here, and you coming here and having me on, and letting me just put my message out to some more people.
For sure.
That's very valuable to me. So appreciate
Thank you. Keep doing what you're doing.
I will.
All right, Nick.
Thanks a lot, brother.
Thanks. All right.
That was good, man. That was fun.
Yeah, that was.